6 hours now. 6 hours is not a quick bit, Jordan. This is insane.
It's Saturday, and you are watching the SMITE Pro League, and we got a great triple header of SPL matches for you on this fine Saturday. I think it's Saturday. Am I right on that? It is Saturday. It's Saturday, and the SMITE Pro League is back. We had 2 matches for you yesterday, both of them interesting. And today, we'll see if some teams turn their fates around and start to rally some wins together. Like I said, 3 matches for you here today. And those matches are going to be impactful, I think, for the mental of a lot of these teams. The standing's going to shake out a little bit more after our triple header. Jade Dragons, Leviathans start us off. After the Leviathans drop 2-0 to the did I say Dragons? Leviathans dropped 2-0 to the Hounds yesterday. My goodness, we are on it.
Godslayer.
It's this Godslayer. That's right. 6 Ferryman Ultra Hounds in the middle of the day. That's going to be an important one to see if the Hounds can keep their momentum going. And then Kings versus Gladiators. There's something lore-wise between those two, I'm sure, to end our Saturday. And then, of course, a triple header on Sunday to end our weekend. And I mentioned the standings. Why are those important, Dave? Well, because the top 2 teams, no, the top 1 team from each division goes to Masters. The other 3 teams in each division have to battle it out during the qualification process. Right now, the Oni Warriors looking pretty at 5-0. Camelot Kings looking to improve to 5-0 later on today. Really important one for the Jade Dragons, though. They're at 2-2. The Oni Warriors starting to run away with the Chaos division a bit here. You know, it's early. I mean, we're kind of halfway through the phase, and so maybe it's early to start talking about must-wins. This one could be a must-win. My name is Dolson. I've talked a lot. And Mifflin just waiting to get a word in edgewise. Miff, we've got some good matches today.
We sure do.
Thanks, Miff. Is this one a must-win for the Jade Dragons? Looking at our first set, Atlantis Leviathans, Jade Dragons. And I'm not talking mental-wise. I'm talking standings-wise. They're right now, as we stand, before this set, 3 wins behind the Oni Warriors. If they lose, it'll still be 3. The Oni Warriors could start to build up, 4 or 5, going into the last couple of weeks of this phase. You think you need this one to have a shot at catching that first seed?
Well, I've looked at the matches to be played for the Oni Warriors, just seeing whether or not the Camelot Kings or the Warriors could be caught. There are a couple of sets for the Warriors and the Kings still this phase that you would consider unlosable for these teams, considering the track record that they have as of now.
Yep.
So if the Jade Dragons want to improve to first seed, if they want to catch up, it's not going to only require them to have a stellar second half to this phase, but you're going to have to prey on the downfall of the Oni Warriors or the Camelot Kings as well. So must win if you want first seed, yes.
Yep.
Is it feasible? Maybe
You're
not.
getting into some muddy waters there. You could say the same for the Atlantis Leviathans. This is a team that has not had a start to the year I think that they or anyone else was anticipating, because this roster built around a core of such talented players: Sheento, Ronngyu, Zapman, adapting, fineokay. And Myth, they found their 1 win against the Gilded Gladiators. And then yesterday lost to the Eldritch Hounds 2-0 in a pretty convincing fashion on the Hound side of the map. This Leviathans team has just not figured out their team fight and maybe still searching for their identity.
Yeah, I would argue game 1, we saw some good from the Atlantis Leviathans. Controlled the early game. We're transitioning to that 15 to 20 minute mark with a pretty significant lead. Just could not quite close it out. And I think a lot of those issues probably do revolve around Sheento being on ping. This is a team that has, in the past, played through their mid laner, and their mid laner exclusively. He was the ace in the hole. You know, you get him to the late game, and you could trust that he's going to remove somebody from the map every single time. Phenomenal ultimate placement, good just positioning as well.
Yeah.
But now on ping, it's been a little bit harder to recreate that style play, to allow Sheento to be that guy for this team. So I think the Leviathans is something we touched on yesterday, have a couple options available to them. You can either continue practicing the funnel farm in a Sheento, have him be that guy, and have him struggle through ping. and have that be a long-term goal of, okay, well, when he's back in studio, once he's back stateside, things are going to look much better for us because we stayed practicing our style. Or we could see the Leviathans make a short-term adjustment so they could start seeing more wins consistently now, which would be play through literally anybody else who doesn't have to deal with however much ping Sheento's got.
It's been a lot of Merlin for Sheento. 4 straight games of Merlin, 2 of them wins against the Gladiators, 2 losses against the Ultra Challenge yesterday. And look, Sheento has not looked like his old self. Again, we've talked about the ping, and we expect that to change when Sheento's able to get into studio, which if I understand correctly, will be soon. And so this team should take on a bit of a better look. However, even outside of Sheento, it seems like some coordination, some positioning sometimes in team fights and the way they play around objectives, still a bit missing. And so I think Sheento being on ping, absolutely a conversation piece. But I think the Leviathans, to your point, Miff, maybe have an identity to figure out still. And luckily, it's early in the year. If you're looking towards Worlds and winning, you got a long, long road until then. Right now, though, we're on the road to Masters, and a team that's trying to keep pace for first in their division is the Jade Dragons, a team that has had some wins, some losses. They've gone through plenty of longer sets. They go 3 against the Ravens and win that one. They go 3 against the Oni Warriors last weekend and lose that one. And so, Miff, it's a Jade Dragons team built around a core of trying to find consistency between Nika, Dardez, Vote, but it's a team that's shown signs of life and maybe can contest for that first in the division, if only the math were a bit more in their favor.
If only. But the Jade Dragons, I think, a bit different from the Leviathans. Maybe not performing to the expectations of the fans at home. They've got that similarity. The Jade Dragons were considered to be one of the favorites for the early phases. Maybe it's brand history. Maybe it's just the PBM and his fan base. But when I look at the Jade Dragons now, one of my major concerns for this team is the draft. I just feel like they haven't quite locked down what style of composition they want to play. For my money, they look best when LASBRA's on a pick-based character, because LASBRA will dominate the map on a pick-based character, but they struggle in the team fight if that's the case. If they put LASBRA on a team fight assassin, they're struggling the early game to keep their head above water. So figuring out a strong middle ground, I think, going to be very important for the Jade Dragons.
This is the team that loves playing double hunter compositions. When you're playing double hunter compositions, you're a true hunter. Very important. Vote has had some good games, some bad games, but has largely looked like a very, very strong ADC here in this current meta. And he sat down with us prior to this big matchup, and take a listen.
I mean, against Raven, I think we should have 2-0'd them. I kind of messed up in the first game. Siegen was a bit awkward against the comps they were drafting. But then the result against Ravens was good, and against Warriors, I think we could have won the set. Game 1, it was really clean game from us, I think, and then game 2 and 3 was kind of just a little bit of a mistake here and there, just kind of snowball. I hate the current meta right now. I just hate how OP mages are right now. It makes my life harder. I think my role is when I get full build, I kill everyone. I guess 3 items I can kill anyone in the map. But I feel like mages need to be nerfed, 100% nerfed. And I would die in this hill. Because the Levi's had a really slow start. I think it's because Sheento's not here, so they're getting a ping effect. I know that feels like because Dardez isn't here either. So I get where they're coming from. But I feel like there's games that have not looked. The games look winnable. But every game they've been in look winnable, I think. So I think they're definitely not someone you write out like a dark horse. I think we're going to win against the Levi's. I don't know how close it'll be, or if it'll be like a 2 or 2-1, but I think we're going to win.
Well, those are the 2 options, either 2-0 or 2-1. It's going to be one of those 2.
He doesn't know. He's just giving you the options, man.
According to Vote. And actually, he brings up a really good point, because we have talked a lot about Sheento for the Leviathans. Dardez also not here for the Jade Dragons, and this is a team that has found a way to figure it out. Granted, just the 1 more win than the Leviathans, right? But they have gotten that 1 extra win. And I think the Dragons still looked at as a team at 2-2. They've played 2 less games than the Leviathans, or maybe just the 1 less game than the Leviathans, and so 1-4 does in my brain just look a lot worse than 2-2 does.
It's
right?
so much worse feeling.
And so I think for the Jade Dragons, this is a team that's found a way to get some of those wins against opponents, despite not having Dardez here in studio. Looking towards picks and bans, Miff, what are some of the important roles that you look towards? Leviathans v Dragons, where do you think some of that emphasis is going to fall?
I think the mid lane ban's probably still going to be there for both of these teams. If we see Dardez continue down the Marty mid pressure play style. I imagine the Leviathans don't exactly want to play against that, because pressure mid into your mid laner that's been struggling so far this year probably doesn't feel so good. The Jade Dragons likely have taken notice that the Leviathans have continued to play through Sheento, so maybe getting him off of his favorite picks could be pretty significant. Merlin in particular, you already brought it up, but in his last 6 games, 4 of which have been on the Merlin for Sheento. Otherwise, we've seen the Hebo at times, the Janus as well. Not certain that we'll see a Janus ban, but Merlin, or even the Hebo as well, I think could fit in very well for the Jade Dragons. Besides that, feels like we might see a little bit of jungle emphasis, namely from the Leviathans in bans. Try and limit LASBRA on the other side, because LASBRA has just had a phenomenal year. Even if the win-loss doesn't look great, LASBRA has looked great every game.
Jungle pivotal in this matchup. Always is, but between Adapting and LASBRA, should be fun to watch. Picks and bans for game number 1, kicking off right now. Now, it's important to note for this Leviathans team, lost 2-0 to the Hounds yesterday, have this matchup against the Dragons, and that's it for this weekend. So early on Saturday, their SPL matches for the weekend are going to be over. Again, if you talk about the mental game, sitting and stewing, if this one does not go, you know, in the favor of the Leviathans, or worse, if it's pretty convincingly for the Jade Dragons in the way the set was yesterday, that's a long time until next Friday for the Leviathans to have to sit. Now, the counter argument is that that's a long time to sit and figure out what went wrong, and just a bit more time to sort out the identity. Only 4 matches for the Leviathans after this one against the Jade Dragons. They'll play the Styx Ferrymen, then the Oni Warriors, Gladiators, Dragons. Those are the last 4 for the phase for the Atlantis Leviathans. So a couple opportunities in there to maybe find some wins. You're right, Miff. A little emphasis towards LASBRA, notably the Serqet, which LASBRA has looked near unstoppable on. Outside of that, duo lane bans between the Cern and the Hell. Horus left open. Marty also left open. Marty at the 87% pick ban rate. Horus, remember, hovering right around that 100% pick ban rate. And the Leviathans, they got run down by the Horus a bit yesterday. I'm wondering if they're maybe not quite as threatened by what the Jade Dragons could be using that pick for. But still, identifying Marty, first pick opportunity, and that's something the Jade Dragons like to base their compositions around as well.
Yeah, I was thinking just this here, Dave. Maybe Horus and Hercules could be just a really strong, nearly unkillable front line for the Jade Dragons, which brings sustain. You'd have your initiation as well. Instead, a pivot away from the Horus, so still available. And the Leviathans, I think, plug and play there and synergize as well with the Marty. You can lock down a single target into the Acid Rain persistent on-field damage for a good long while. But as far as the top 2 from the Jade Dragons for now, I mean, this is very strong. You're going to have unkillable Aphrodite, who makes whatever squishy target almost as unkillable. You've got plenty of options still available. We know that Susano is firmly within LASBRA's God Pool, was one of the last picks that he had taken. So the classic cringe combo of Afro Susano available to the Jade Dragons from here. You've got the initiation from range thanks to Hercules. If you get a jungler with a little bit of AoE CC, I think the rest of the picks are just whatever you feel like playing. There's not necessarily a role you need filled in the team fight, barring consistent damage. But that'll come either way.
Hebo at 45% win rate, which feels a bit low to me. I feel like I've seen Hebo dominating a lot of games here recently, but right around the 50%, you know, that's always pretty strong. In the SPL, winning about half the games is generally a good look. Hercules across 20 games has a 60% win rate. Horus still closing in on that 100% pick ban rate, almost right at it.
Classic.
Is right at it. And late in the draft here. And so the Jade Dragons had the opportunity to pick the Horus. They wanted what they got. Hera, now the option for Dardez out of mid. And it seems like despite playing on ping, hasn't gotten in studio with the rest of the Jade Dragons here yet, Miff. Dardez sticking with what he knows, and Hera is certainly one of the gods that he knows.
Yeah, just plays it very well and has played it consistently. That is a god that is difficult to dive thanks to the HP shield, has got a good deal of self-peel thanks to the polymorph, and if you think it's a 1v2 or a 2v2 up against Hera, you haven't taken into account Argus, who is essentially just another body that she can make it very difficult for you to line up those skill shots or block maybe some of these abilities that stop on minions hit or things along those lines. As of now, not too many of those options to block out on the side of the Leviathans, but what Hera does bring is that consistent damage that we were talking about, as well as just a little bit more CC. And anytime you can get non-consequential CC that can still threaten relics, I think very valuable to any composition, and that polymorph brings just that.
Man, I mean, you got some pretty dominant picks on both sides here. If you're looking at the top 3 of the Atlantis Leviathans, this is a top 3 that most teams in the league want to get. A Marty, a Hebo, a Horus, that's near top in class for the roles that they're assigned to. Could say the same for the Jade Dragons, maybe outside of Hera, but of course that gets the Dardez boost. That's just straight up what Dardez wants to be playing. So Hercules, Aphrodite, Hera for the Dragons. Both teams, I think, getting a really, really strong top 3. Now, remember one thing we mentioned about Sheento is some games have been great, some games he's looked a bit lost. However, in the last 4, it's all been Merlin. Jade Dragons are not going to give Sheento that opportunity here in game number 1 at least. 54% win rate for the Ram, for the Jade Dragons. This is a standard typical vote pick. So where do the Atlantis Leviathans and really Zapman go? Zapman has played fine, you could argue, this year, but hasn't looked stellar alongside the rest of the Atlantis Leviathans. This is a team that's, again, trying to build up some momentum here. Only got 1 kill in the set against the Hounds yesterday. 1 and 5 combined across 2 games, but then looked amazing against the Gladiators. Looked pretty good against the Kings. And with Cern and Ram taken away, you'd wondered if Ishtar would maybe be the pick. That's been really popular. And if this could be maybe Myth a double ADC composition for the Leviathans. It is, with the Marty and the Chernobog.
So this will leave Zapman in a position where he can hover in lane, doesn't necessarily need to rotate too often, and can utilize that ultimate when the time comes. I think that fits Zapman's playstyle very well. Has the opportunity to play very safe. Chernobog, one of the most difficult hunters to dive, has an Aegis built into the kit so long as he's standing near a wall, and there are plenty of walls on the Conquest map, so I think has a good deal of counter-initiation, counter-engage up against the Jade Dragons. The concern being now is that where exactly has Sheento been playing this Marty? Now we know that this Hebo is headed for the jungle, Guan for the solo lane most likely, Horus for support, Chernobog out of the duo. So has Sheento been a Marty player? Has he enjoyed this pick? Is it something that you're going to play through consistently? Because this does lean into you've got a high pressure mid laner, you want to play through that mid 3v3. Sheento has been struggling a little bit with ping. And now he has to play a god that has to land auto attacks consistently as well. Right. So a bit of difficulty there. But it does, I suppose, alleviate some of the pressure on Sheento in the absolute latest portions of the game where you are reliant on that mage burst damage to secure your kills, to secure that team fight win. You've now shifted that responsibility over to adapting. And I think he's certainly very capable of playing that. But maybe not the pace of game that adapting has become accustomed to recently either. When we look at his most recent picks, it's a lot of Serqet, a lot of Bakasura, some Camazot, some get things started early on pick-based characters. Hebo has got the potential to put out that damage similar to the Camazots and the Serqets, but maybe not as self-sufficient throughout the early game. He's going to need a little bit more help from his allies insofar as starting up the fight or finding that CC to facilitate an aggressive crushing wave.
Not that it really changes all that much. I feel like most SPL teams generally pretty in tune with how certain compositions are played, but I feel like what the Leviathans have drafted is something that the Jade Dragons would have drafted themselves, and so it feels like they've got a really good grasp on how the Leviathans are going to try to play this. The Ratatoskr last pick here, Myth, for LASBRA, it's not something Laz has played in the last 6 games, but it's absolutely something Laz has played pretty consistently over the course of his career. I remember LASBRA was on a tear there for a couple of weeks where it felt like every single game was getting 6+ kills, the deaths were really low, has slowed down a bit. Had a slower set against the Oni Warriors where he only got 1, 2, or 3 kills in those 3 games. But that feels like a bit out of the norm for LASBRA here. This Ratatoskr, you think, has the potential to make life difficult for any lane, in particular on the Leviathans?
I think if you're going to a lane, it would probably be towards Chernobog. If you can force that ultimate defensively, Rat's got pretty decent options to stick to him afterward, unless he's jumping into an enemy shadow. And if that's the case, if you've dealt your damage beforehand, he's probably landing at low HP. Otherwise, if I'm LASBRA, I'm really thinking about jumping on the Hebo. I want to chase Hebo through the jungle, exploit him in the early game, poke him out, slow down his farm, because when you compare the relative value of these 2 picks at 25 minutes, Hebo is going to outscale. Hebo is going to be more important to the team fight. So if you could just slow down that and play spoiler to his game throughout the early, then become an initiator for your team in the late game, I think that's where you're going to see the majority of the value from this rat.
I think it's an interesting thought experiment as well, because it's something I talked about early in the draft where you get a Marty, a Hebo, a Horus, which are maybe 3 of the most looked-after picks in the SPL right now. But then you could say something similar for the Dragons between the Hercules and the Aphrodite. The Hera a bit unique, but again, that's a very Dardez-centric pick. If you isolate the top 3, and maybe that's unfair, do you feel like either of these two teams won the draft handedly in the first 3 picks that they got, given the relative strength of and the priority of really all 6 gods, maybe all 5 outside the Hera, that both have drafted?
I tend to favor the Leviathans draft, I think, pretty significantly. The Horus, the Marty have been very consistent. The Aphrodite has been anything but. The Hercules, I think, at a similar level to the Horus.
Yep.
But the Leviathans got a little bit too much, I think.
And Miff, it's about play on field. That's what's going to win this game. We'll find out who takes game number 1 with your casters, J-Mac and Gore.
Thank you so much. It's the Leviathans and the Dragons to kick off our Saturday morning of the SMITE Pro League. And both these teams fighting for a major win here, Goremizer, because right now the Jade Dragons 3 games behind the Oni Warriors in the win column so far. The Leviathans 1 behind the Dragons, so a must-win for the Leviathans to keep their chances alive, a must-win for the Dragons to really kind of shore up some of that gap between 2nd and 1st seed. And putting double Hunter for the Leviathans, but it's not actually going to be the Martichoras in mid that was maybe being speculated. Instead, it's Zapman piling that one, Sheento taking the Chernobog mid.
Now, this is interesting for a multitude of reasons. One, we've seen Marty have the most success in mid, right? His damage is really good. He kind of fits, you know, we've equated him to AMC a lot. And yeah, it's not like a one-to-one comparison, but damage numbers insane when he's in mid, right? His presence is able to have good rotations in mid. You maybe get a little bit more specifically for your jungler. If you're looking at like your hidden grass, things like that from mid. And also just straight up his win rate from mid has been better. But that being said, a lot of the times we were seeing him thrown in the duo lane, it was still with like a mage in the mid lane. You didn't have someone else to pick up crit, period. So theoretically, it could still work for Zap. It's just going to be a different style of play, right? He's going to go for a different build with some of the nerfs. Maybe it's honestly even better for him. And I think that this is going to be a lane that's nothing too crazy. Maybe not trying to get into 1v1s. Vote might go crit later. That might cause some trouble for you. But when you get into the team fight, you're still going to provide the same thing, not the end of the road. It's mainly interesting because we've seen a lot of the time that when you have an ultimate specifically like Chernobog, his isn't long and charged like a Neathal, right? A Neath in mid makes sense because it's less duration for your ult to get from one side of the map to the other. Chernobog's is super fast, so even if you're on the left side of the map, you can get to the right, and it feels like an instant. And so it's interesting to see Sheento picking this one up instead of the Marty just because of what it can really provide for the team. Would have given Zap opportunities to potentially split push that now is going to fall onto Sheento, while Zap's going to be a little more in the mix of things, which honestly might be them playing around the fact that Sheento's not here, right? Recognizing that, you know what? PvE, we want Zapman here. We know that he's going to maybe be a little more consistent, or PvP, I should say. And then if we need someone to be split pushing a tower, garnering some pressure on the map while the rest of us are setting up for like an FG later on, then Sheento can apply that pressure in like left, use his ult to get into the fight, but it's not the end of the world if things don't go well for him.
I don't know, maybe it's just a thing for me. You know, you have a player playing on a higher ping than the ones in studio. I would think you would want to put the one who's more basic attack centric, the one who really focuses in on those autos, to be the player who's fighting with less ping. Because coming from somebody who, whenever I first started playing SMITE, I was playing on a consistent about 130 to 150 ping in my parents' house. Not fun to try and play Hunters on that, let me tell you. So we'll see how it works out. Still gives you at least that double ADC core that is talked about amongst players, where you have a traditional Hunter in one spot, give them that crit style of damage, then you have your more ability style. So should still work out in theory. It'll just come down to the execution on field for Leviathans. The Jade Dragons, LASBRA, did manage to get beads earlier on from adapting in the mid 2v2. Now trying to get aggressive up against fineokay. Gets the stun. Nika, low on mana, needs the pickup or the push. Doesn't have either available.
Yeah.
And with adapting, rotating over, fineokay gets the bailout from his jungler.
It's going to give him enough pressure, though, right? Nika doesn't have a lot of mana to work with, but you still have some damage. You can still go in for the blue buff. Unfortunately, they're not going to get it. LASBRA might lose.
LASBRA dashed on and adapting. We'll get first blood because LASBRA's greedy play. He blinks into the blue buff, dashes right in, doesn't get the buff, doesn't get the stun, the kill. Instead, it's him turned on.
That's the key, right? It's the blink and then the dash. He uses both of his potential disengage tools to get a little closer. It's well played by adapting, kind of reading the scenario. You know, fineokay is getting pressured out, has low health, low mana, doesn't have a lot that he can really offer to the fight, and so you know, because of the fact that LASBRA was just over here, it's going to be a blue buff invade. So he starts to pull it back, further away from the path that the dragons are going to take to get there. And at that point, it's either you just forego the blue buff, or you have to use something to get closer and try to secure this buff away. Once you do that, there's a lot of damage turnaround potential from Ahibo still even early in the game. And so I think that's a good call from adapting, kind of recognizing the scenario, shows some of the veteranship, pulls LASBRA into a very, very unfortunate scenario, and like you said, a little bit of a greed play on the other side. If Nika has more mana, they maybe get a kill on fineokay, and that entire fight and that entire buff is different. Otherwise, it is what we saw, and it's just a really good kill to pick up. You get it on the opposing jungler, you pick it up for your jungler, and once that Doom Orb's online, you can imagine adapting's going to start getting hands-on.
Yeah, fast rotation over to Duo for adapting. Drops the shield buff for his team. The Leviathans get the benefit of the first blood, but doesn't really seem to have slowed down LASBRA and Nika's builds. Acorn already finished up for LASBRA, and Nika with the Golden Blade now. And fineokay using the ultimate on the wave. We've seen a few times where maybe greedy plays like that to use ult to clear wave can sometimes come back to bite you, but doesn't seem like LASBRA is too concerned trying to go over to the right side now after the failed gank just earlier on at the blue. We'll see if fineokay ends up getting punished for a play like that, but now with defense in pocket, LASBRA going back to base, it seems that fineokay will be just fine over in the solo lane.
Yeah, I think he's going to be able to coast a little bit. You might fall a little behind. I don't think the lane, you know, Hercules' early game is typically one who can find some early kills if you step up to the tower line. I think at this point, especially with the items they have online, probably not a whole lot of 1v1 potential that's happening over there. You need your junglers. You'll need maybe a little bit more pressure. I'm actually really excited now that we've hit level 5, though, because LASBRA Dardez, one thing that the desk, I think, kind of glossed over, and I think could be really impactful, also could just do nothing. But the double dunk, right? A small knock-up from Argus, a knock-up that comes down from LASBRA, having that capability to kind of CC chain and get a lot of damage out there, a lot of control as well, could be big for the Dragons in a lot of these team fights. LASBRA has that ult now. And so you're either going to be forcing beads, which with knockups, it's always a crapshoot, right? Trying to figure out where and when. You most of the time need to free beads it. It could cause a lot of disruption for the Leviathans and give this mid-game, I think, a little bit more of a chaos-leaning favor if they can get some of the engages that they have the potential for.
Nika being shredded by adapting, and fineokay. We'll pop that heal and get a little bit of it back, but adapting and LASBRA spending a lot of time on the right side. Blue buff invade successful for the Leviathans to keep some of that mana sustain away from Nika over on that side of the map. Try and put a little bit of punish back to the Hercules, try and really go at them for that failed invade just earlier on, but now it's up to seeing what the Leviathans or maybe what the Dragons do in response to all of this, because at the moment, outside of that initial little fight that we had by the Leviathans blue buff, it's been fairly passive. Dual lane, we saw aggression from Ronngyu, Zapman. Maybe that's part of the reason why they put the Martichoras there, was it took Vote down to about 25% health at one point. Healed back up by Mike and the Aphrodite, but we'll have to see what Ronngyu does with this Horus, because this has been a pick, Gore, that has been, I believe, up till this weekend, 100% pick ban rate in the SBL.
Yep, he has been doing real well, as it turns out. And I mean, his presence has been incredibly good. We saw yesterday, right in the right hands, what he is capable of, and can change a lot of the way that a team plays. It's been interesting to see Ronngyu piloting it, right? I feel like even though I think I love Horus as a support, we've been seeing a lot in the solo lane, and I like that, one, he's got that flexibility, but two, that you're kind of working around that if you're the Leviathans. The things that Horus is going to be bringing in solo, he still brings over in the support role. He's just going to be a little tankier, maybe slightly less damage, but he's still got Prot Shred. He's still got the capabilities to heal and reposition the team, and those are the three things I'm really looking for.
Adapting blinked on by LASBRA, but it's a 2-level lead for Adapting. Still takes a hefty bit of poke. Loses out on beads. Vote still trying to fight over the shield buff. Ronngyu here to now make this a 3-for-3 battle. The shield buff will go to the Leviathans. The Jade Dragons will give up their push. It was a Solid start of the fight by LASBRA. It took about a quarter of Adapting's HP by himself, but getting the beads, I'd imagine, to be more aggressive. Instead, now it's a turn back onto LASBRA. Stunned, knocked up, gets the Undying Love, and a fast dash out. Ult by Adapting off the mark. And the Leviathans, they force the Dragons away.
Yeah, that's unfortunate showing. I think, look, First Blood, I didn't mind it because as much as it's unfortunate, LASBRA had managed to keep a little bit of pace. Now, though, things are falling apart. And you can really see it in the damage output from Adapting, right? He finishes the Doom Orb, and he gets hands-on. It's sometimes as easy as that. And a lot of it is just this presence. He knows he can do this damage. He knows he can get away with it because his team has really allowed him to power farm. You had called it out, 2 levels in the jungle off of just a kill and now a TKO that sends LASBRA back. If LASBRA maybe knows that the Grindstone is keeping up in some of the farm, it might change a little bit, but I think the Leviathans took that small lead, took that one play that resulted in a kill earlier, and have really kind of ramped it all into that experience in the jungle. It's not a runaway by any means, but seeing that damage, seeing the control that Adapting's able to bring, and the fact that it forces PBM to use his ult, in the future you might not get away as easily, right? And it could be a kill just as simple as that. And so I think LASBRA is going to have to choose these next few minutes and the next few engagements very carefully based on where Adapting is at. Otherwise, that 0-1 might turn into an 0-2, and the game might start slipping away from that point.
No beads for Dardez now. Vote dashed on by Ronngyu. Will do a little bit of damage from Zapman as well, but has the sustain from PBM on the Aphrodite to keep himself back up. LASBRA trying to play catch-up in farm now, as he has fallen behind Adapting. And the Leviathans, what will they do with their next move? We saw the Horus ultimate used almost immediately in response. Dardez used his beads in mid, and then Ronngyu immediately jumps up to the sky, takes Adapting to the red buff, and on red buff respawn. Must have had the timer for that one to make a play so aggressive for it. And now an aggressive play towards the dual lane. PBM gonna get stunned now, rooted out. Undying Love is there, but the Crushing Wave is ready for Adapting, and he won't even need it. One more auto attack should take down Mike. It'll be the Water Hands instead. Ronngyu, where's he gonna take the squad to the Gold Fury pit? Seems to be the call with Sheento in tow. The Leviathans will go for 1 plus an objective.
This is just, I mean, clean smite right now, right? What you're seeing is a very easy play coming from one, but the snipes are good.
No,
oh no!
No, it's Pyromancer.
I was hoping. Oh,
close.
I got baited by the game, dude.
No, it was Pyromancer for the Dragons. That was their response.
I gotta give Vote credit for trying though. That's impressive.
He did go for it, but Leviathans do get Fury. Dragons get Pyromancer. Maybe not the most even trade as far as gold is concerned, but getting the Pyromancer's Runic Bomb in pocket will certainly help the Dragons out.
Yeah, that actually helps balance that fight out, right? A kill immediately, admittedly onto the support, so not as much, but another kill for the jungler starts to stumble things a little in favor of Adapting, and after what we've seen the last few minutes, it's been that way, right? LASBRA hasn't been able to get hands-on. He's still 2 levels down. Let's call it a level and a half because he should be hitting 11 relatively soon, but he's been struggling. And you need something to balance out not only the kill, but picking up that objective, right? You were 400 gold before that play down. For the Dragons, that's not that bad, but seeing it jump up by 1,000 is uncomfortable. Split across everybody, it's about 200 gold, so it's not really going to manifest in items just yet. But that is a slippery slope. If that Pyromancer doesn't go their way, right? They don't get this Runic Bomb, and even looking towards the future, depending on what that Runic Bomb gets used for, it might cause a little more trouble for the Dragons as a whole, right? I think that if you're suddenly looking at, what, 2,500, 3,000 gold down if you're not able to pick that up and the Leviathans make a play for it. They get the Runic Bomb. Much easier play for the Leviathans. And this is them just barely ahead. Being able to walk up to a mid-camp, no care in the world. They know that they're going to get out. Their relics have not been really pressured at all. It's just the unfortunate scenario. I mean, and all of this has literally been off of that one blue buff play. It's not been something crazy. Even that kill onto Aphrodite is just a small opener in comparison. It's jungle pressure that they have really managed to amass, and LASBRA can't step up to really make his team fight. At this point, they're waiting for late game.
But as one thing mentioned on the desk, Ronngyu again with an aggressive play to solo lane, bringing Adapting in. The crash by. Nika's able to dash away, but fineokay is on top, waits out for the ultimate. Stun was off the mark, but one stun's good, and adapting now on a killing spree. The Leviathans are rocketing through the early game, and all through the hands of adapting and Ronngyu, who are really getting the show going for the Leviathans.
I love the way they're playing it. There's just no other way to say it. Like, Ronngyu is on point with the ults. Ronngyu is leading the team and kind of heralding them into plays. And Adapting's got the damage done. He's got 3 kills out of the 3 that they've picked up. And now with the Divine Ruin, Hercules is a lot easier to kill. Anybody attached to an Aphrodite is a lot easier to kill. I think he's not going to suffer too much. It's a little bit of gold, but most of it manifests in the jungle. The levels are manifesting themselves in the jungle. It's the only real lead the Leviathans have. But they're playing through it, and they're making it look really good in the process. We're just not getting the same effect from the Ratatoskr, and Mifflin said it on the desk, and I agree with him wholeheartedly, which is that the late game skews in favor of the Hebo already. The fact that he's got the 3-level lead, he's got the item lead, he's got the damage lead, I mean, it's not going to slow down unless LASBRA makes some really insane plays, and he's going to have to cook in the hyperbolic time chamber for a little while to actually get to the point where he can clap back the way that the Dragons need him to.
Yeah, maybe a shutdown onto adapting could
That would
bring
be
LASBRA
pretty big.
back. Already a killing spree, a 2-level lead. Would surely be a nice little boon for LASBRA.
It would turn to a very different game. Like,
Oh, yeah.
where it's 3 levels right now, it's 15 to 12. If he got a kill at this exact moment, I wouldn't be surprised if it was 15-14 right afterward, right? Not enough to immediately be the same level, but he would be right there again. He'd be in the conversation.
Dance around the Pyromancer. Last time the Dragons snuck this away while Leviathans did Fury. Now it's the Leviathans taking the Pyro with no answer back. The Jade Dragons caught sleeping at the wheel.
Yeah.
As the Leviathans walk up and grab an objective. No tier 1 to fall back to. The Dragons playing aggressive. PBM attached to Nika right now to try and find a pick towards adapting, but just a little too slippery on the Hebo. Adapting's able to snake away.
I am going to pull my eyes away from the jungle, though, because I feel like, you know, it's very easy right now to just harp on the fact that, hey, LASBRA's behind and suffering. Dardez has been doing fine, which maybe is what fineokay's trying to change right now. Mike ults, so that's going to keep the pressure, I think, away from them. But you're getting, you know, an equal play from the Hera. You're actually ahead if your vote, which is huge. And so your carries, some of the main damage focus you're going to be bringing into the late game, are doing just fine. You're missing out on some engage, maybe some early kill pressure that could come from LASBRA, and it's going to cause suffering in the objective area, right? You can't go for that Pyromancer. You can't make a play for it because it's just going to cause you too much trouble. With an Oni Fury up, especially with the presence on the Dragons on the left now, I wouldn't be surprised if LASBRA's holding onto that ult specifically to either go for a steal or maybe get a big setup. Again, that knock-up can really change the pace of a fight.
Fury,
Oh my
half
God.
HP, it is melting to the Leviathans. The Dragons have got to get in, but they do nothing. And are just once again caught staring at the Leviathans, who take yet another objective. A 3,000 gold lead for Leviathans and maybe more. fineokay fishing for an attempt to start up a kill or go for an invade at purple. Doesn't get either in his favor, but the Leviathans are running away with this early game. And now maybe a tier 1 tower to boot. Only Mike is inside the tower to defend, and with fineokay in the pack line, there's not much the Dragons can do to stop this.
Yeah, tier 1, 17 minutes in with the damage output the Leviathans have. I don't blame the Dragons for stepping up, or for not stepping up to that one, right? You got to play it safe. You got to play it a little more cautiously. I think that's just the only stance you can make. Stop them from getting a tier 2. Stop them from taking some of your jungle. Do whatever you can to keep this side of the map as into it as possible. That was also a much-needed win for the Leviathans, right? So far, the Ram has been getting a pretty favorable end of the trade. Has actually been, what, a level head until just now? The last couple of plays putting Zapman finally from the 15 now to the 17 mark, which was 16 to 15 earlier in favor of vote. So a couple of levels in his favor, really changing things up. And we get to see some of that damage burn potential they have. It is absolutely... I'm going to use the phrase obnoxious. That was insane how quickly that Gold Fury started to melt. And when you look at the builds, it's not like what we've seen so far over the last couple of weeks where it's like just insane crit damage numbers. You've got a Soul Eater pickup here for Zapman. You've got the Transcendence. You got a Crusher. Like, he is full on in the abilities, and it is going to pay off in massive amounts. I mean, That was a small hit on the vote, and it still took a little chunk out of his health bar. Imagining what Zap's going to be able to provide for his team, especially in team fights. I mean, if the Dragons step up into it, this Marty is going to be heralding victory for the Leviathan, so they have to play very cautiously around Zap.
Mike, once again, by himself at a Tier 1 tower, staring down 4 Leviathans. fineokay will just try and play zone to the back end of the fight. Finds knockup on a PVM, does adapting. Tier 1 tower once again under threat with the damage output of Zapman there. He'll be able to take one out. Sheento was defending left side, but will just sit back. Adapting uses his beads against LASBRA. It's 170 seconds now that Adapting doesn't have that immediate CC immunity, that cleanse for himself. Could be dangerous waters now for Leviathan's jungler, but with the lead that the Leviathans are establishing just by showing up on map everywhere, another Pyromancer, the Dragons have got to step up for this one.
You'd think they'd want to fight it. Nika's going to lead the way in, but I don't know if they have the confidence to start a fight. They can at least stall it. I think it's too dangerous to really go into.
Sheento can join at any moment. LASBRA jumps in, lets Zapman to the sky, and Adapting trying to weave his way into the pack line. Rongyu's got to dash out, and Sheento will continue his split push on the left side. Remember, ultimate available for this Chernobog to get in. The Dragons pull the Pyro, fineokay to the backline, and Ronngyu to the skies will dunk down in with his backliner. Sheento joins the fray. LASBRA barely gets up to the sky, but Vote doesn't get that same luxury. Sheento takes down the Hunter, and the Dragons are left to run.
Not much you can do in a scenario like that. Look, they took a majority of their health bar before Sheento even gets over here. Zap does so much damage. Adapting does so much damage. And it TKOs, I mean, LASBRA didn't back until just now. Nika is going to have to really force a play. And it's all up to Dardez to make something big happen. I don't think that there's anything the Dragons could do in a fire fight like that. And I mean, it has just been a slow, I don't even know if slow choke. I mean, it's been 20 minutes of just dominance. Again, off of one blue buff that has really just escalated into something insane in favor of the Leviathans here.
Let's climb up for the Leviathans. 20-minute Fire Giant up over the Jade Dragons. Still 3 Tier 2 towers. Now, if it weren't for the SCC set that we saw yesterday, Gore, I would say, man, 3 towers. This should just mean that, you know, it's going to be fine. Leviathans can't get much from it. But we saw in the SCC set yesterday, one pick and a nice delay from a solo laner was able to open up the door for 2 towers, 2 Phoenixes. Now, that's worst case scenario, but for now, the Leviathans will use the first minute of their buff. Taking down Primal Fury, pushing up some of these waves, and a full group up over on the left side. LASBRA has just made his way back to base. Gore, very soon, we're going to be starting to look at some siege defenses by the Jade Dragons, whether these be at Tier 2s or at Phoenixes later on. Still to be determined, but the Jade Dragons have just not looked comfortable in this matchup yet.
And honestly, it might be a little bit before they start feeling comfortable or even looking comfortable. Good news is Sieges is where teams have been getting more or less checked right now, right? You know, taking the Tier 2s, 21-minute Fire Giant shouldn't be too difficult, especially with Double Hunter. So the Leviathans, I anticipate these towers not going to last too long under their eyes. Phoenixes, that's a different story. With Hercules there, you've got very easy pullback into a Phoenix, very easy disruption, 2 knockups to really cause some trouble right at the Phoenix line as well. And so there's a very easy world where, especially after, I'm flashing back to the Warriors game a couple weeks ago where 3 Phoenixes down, they still fought back. Sometimes the sieges go well for the defending team. I think the Dragons have a good defense comp. Some of it's around the ultimates, so it's not going to be very consistent in its defense. But it's still something they can try to hold on to. The towers, I like this. Soft defense, cause a little trouble. Don't necessarily overcommit. You're not going to save these towers when there's double hunters. You're not going to save these towers when there's as much damage that the Leviathans have. But you can at least kind of show face, make sure that it's not going to be easy. And you're not letting the Leviathan step up to the Phoenix line. You've burned most of this Fire Giant. You've lost a lot in the process, but you have saved the most essential portions of your base. And you've given yourself an opportunity that if you can either fight in the next minute and 20 when the Fire Giant respawns, or if you have to let that one go to the Leviathans and at least stand guard around your Phoenixes, you have more opportunities. You're not stressing about fire minions on left or right. You're in a good spot. for the next couple of minutes, for the next couple of fights. And you've got the itemization. I mean, what was LASBRA doing the entire time? His team's defending. He's out there farming. What was 3 levels is now 1. He's got the items to catch up, just finished up the Serrated Edge, and he's still working on it, right? Level 20 is still something that he's being chased for LASBRA and for Vote. But once they hit that point, you're going to have a little extra damage on those ults, right, as they finish it off. You're going to have some extra gold now that they've finished up pushing up the lanes and from this Tier 1 tower that presumably is about to fall. It gives the Dragons a little opportunity. It's by no means a great, favorable game yet, but they have done so much to keep themselves in this, despite the fact that it has been very overwhelmingly Leviathans.
Zapman and Sheento will clear up some minions on the left side and maybe get prepped for their Fire Giant. Sheento waiting to see if anybody steps into his lane again. Can just continue split pushing all he wants on this Chernobog. We saw in the last fight, by the time he had already dunked in with his ultimate, the fight had already been brewing for a while up against the Dragons. Pyromancer once more for Leviathans, not a single member of the Dragons here to step up. And in fact, all the Dragons on the left side of the map, if enough of them get spotted out by the minions or by even just a ward, this should be a call for Leviathans to go for the Fire Giant. They'll do just that. Without a shadow of a doubt, we'll be able to get this one for all 5. Sheento not even necessary for the burn there. The crits don't matter when you have this much damage and this much of a lead. Ronngyu, where's he taking the squad with this ultimate? It's a mid lane to right Phoenix, it seems to be. They'll crash in right behind the minions, but are greeted by the front line of the Jade Dragons.
Yeah, I think that was a play that if the Dragons, it looked like the Dragons were going to keep pushing, and I'm going to go ahead and call it out. That would have been a bad decision, period, because they would have lost to Phoenix in the process. If they keep pushing, that Phoenix play happens immediately. I like the call from the Leviathans. Maybe would have been helpful if it was a little more, let's say, Kings-esque, right? Genetics likes to bring the minions with him in a lot of those ults. Difficult to time. You're not really in the spot for it. Running to the minion wave to then ult, it's not going to get you the distance you needed, so it's not like they have the time to make that work. Realistically, they make the play that they can try to. They force the Dragons to fall back. Meanwhile, the Dragons, I mean, you had called it out. That play on the left, that is just the biggest note that they are not fighting for that Fire Giant at the time. They are waiting for 30. They are waiting to defend, and they are hoping to drag this game out a little longer. But you got to deal with the double Hunter, and it's so difficult, especially, I mean, LASBRA steps up. That's only 2 crits that he hits. The autos should be pretty easy. What? And that's just a single-man split. Like, nobody's bothering to stop the Leviathans. They're just playing Smite at the Dragons now.
LASBRA just gave Sheento a Phoenix. Hand-delivered it to him. PBM in the backline now being dealt with by fineokay. The Leviathans are just walking up and taking whatever they please at this point. Jungle, Phoenixes. At this point, the only thing they're missing is a couple of kills on the Dragons to close this game out. And Gord, the Leviathans haven't needed very many kills this game. 4-0 at 26 minutes. It has just been methodical by the Leviathans. Every single objective has gone their way. Sans one Pyromancer that the Dragons took to respond to Gold Fury.
This is reminding me of the pace of a game, actually from last year. It was Dragons versus the Bolts at the time. And it was just so one-sided. And I believe that game actually holds the record for the lowest amount of kills in an SBL game, because it was just the 4. And what had happened was very similar instances where the Bolts were behind the Dragons at the time, and every little fight, they just didn't engage. They recognized, you know what, if we step up, we're going to lose this, so instead we're going to hedge our bets, play back, look for defense, and that defense lasted barely around the Tier 1s, didn't last around the Tier 2s. Eventually the Phoenix line got breached, and it was won. Literally, the game was won without a single death on the board. The Dragons had just walked into the Titans room at the time and taken it. And that's what this game is reminding me of. Like, it feels like the Dragons aren't willing to fight. They haven't stepped up to fight. I think they will under a Titan siege. I don't think the Leviathans can just walk in easily the way that the game I'm referencing did. But at the same time, they haven't really done anything over the last 15 minutes. And so I really want to see some signs of life. I mean, a little bit of aggression and engage from LASBRA. It's definitely still an uphill battle for them, but you got to battle at all if you want to win the game here. You're not just going to be able to force them to, or at least allow them into the Titan room for free. And the next Fire Giant, I mean, what, you've got a minute and a half around before it spawns, or sorry, before it would be enhanced after it spawns. Leviathans might be able to play with time and just have this game go in their favor.
Ronngyu dashes in, has to dash out immediately. All the while, you want to talk about how the Dragons aren't fighting. Sheento's doing the exact same thing. He has not been with the Leviathans for the majority of this game. Split pushing left, while his team takes right Phoenix. He gets a left Phoenix. Well, now this is probably the closest that Sheento has gotten to his team in a while, which is joining them at the mid for a potential siege. The new Fire Giant has respawned already. It's sitting by and waiting if the Leviathans walk up to it, but Leviathans are just wasting the Dragons' time here at mid.
Both teams are just waiting for this to get enhanced, right? The Dragons have no, there's no reason for them to step up and fight for a non-enhanced Fire Giant because in the map state that they have right now, it pretty much gives them nothing. And if the Leviathans wait for it to be enhanced, it's much easier for them to knock down this Phoenix. The respawning Phoenixes in a few minutes. And so it's this delicate balance point. They don't have to wait. It'd make things easier on them. But you get it now. You stop the Dragons from being able to make a play. Feel pretty confident in the next couple of minutes of your capabilities. Left side Phoenix going to respawn. And Sheento, you had called him out. I mean, he's over here. First up, he's got a 3K pot in his inventory as well.
Sheento is farming.
And he might just kill off LASBRA here if he gets the better end of a trade. No forces LASBRA to fall back, so. He's just doing everything that he needs to. This is the Sheento we've been waiting for this season so far. And he's playing, look, a lot of people might hate this comparison, mainly because of the nightmares it will give them, but it's similar to what Loki used to do, right? He's just going to stay in a different lane until someone forces him to not be there anymore. And no one stopped him, so he's just going to keep doing it.
No one will. fineokay to the back line. Will not find a stun on anybody with that cavalry charge. Boulder from Nika thrown out. Doesn't find a home either. Instead, it's just constant poke from Zapman. Up against the frontliners, Mike and Nika both half HP. The carry's finding a path in. In goes Ronngyu. Nearly down goes Nika. And with Argus used, Adapting is on the run. This is the first fight back from the Dragons, but it's just not enough. Snipe not there. Adapting lives through. And so does the mid Phoenix for the Dragons. They lose out on the side birds. But with LASBRA out, it's now a 5v4.
A 5v4, Fire Giant still there. They've got sustain. Adapting hadn't fully backed. It's not a full reset. Either you get this mid Phoenix and you do get to fall back, or you use the next 40 seconds to start getting aggressive on the Titan. And look, they've got fire minions, not only on left, but being pushed up right now by Sheento on right. I mean, this is a really good spot for the Leviathans. They might just win it.
30 seconds till LASBRA is back, even less than that, and Zapman continues to pelt damage to the Acid Rain. fineokay, cavalry charge in, Vote used the beads, and it's a boulder from Nika. The Titan is starting to take some damage. fineokay taking that up, but it's a big damage and a big pushback for Nika to disposition Adapting, but it's just not enough. The Atlantis Leviathans, with only 5 kills this game, seal out game number 1 against the Dragons.
Look, really aggressive play on a blue buff. Normally, it's not that big a deal. And anything that, I mean, it was almost 30 minutes ago. Should not still hold relevance, but that's where all of that lead comes from. And from that moment forward, I did not see a very aggressive play from the Dragons until that last moment in their dying breath. And so it was just passive gameplay. It's not going to get you a lot, right? The map's being played better by the Leviathans. The only time that you got aggressive was that one moment around the Pyromancer where they just happened to trade it out. A little bit of snipes that if it had gone well for Vote, that maybe rocks the boat and gets the Dragons back into this. But the snipes don't steal anything. The Pyromancer doesn't amount to anything. And the Leviathans just get to kind of slowly drag the Dragons to the finish line and win that game. I mean, it is very much just they got to play clean, methodical SMITE, and they never really had to worry about any answer back for a lot of the moves they made.
I mean, this may have been one of the biggest non-confrontational games of SMITE we have seen so far this year. I mean, the Dragons just refused to step on fight. Going into that last team fight, LASBRA had like 3,100 damage going through there, and then goes down at the very end. Didn't get to expand that very much. Leviathans take game number 1. Can it keep up that same level? Will we see fight back from the Dragons in game 2?
Hopefully.
Stick around, and hopefully we'll find out after this.
Tell me you love me. Tell me you love me.
We gon' break up, then we make up. Act like we're gonna be friends. Flames the fire, take me higher. Leave it all over again, all over again. Leave it all over again, all over again. Leave it all over again. We gon' break up, then we make up. Act like we're gonna be friends. Blaze the fire, take me higher. Leave it all over again, all over again. Leave it all over again, all over again.
Hey, game one goes over to the Atlantis Leviathans, which you may have not expected after the way the Leviathans have been playing recently, but this felt like a bit of a vintage, oh no, I used it again. It's a vintage Leviathans win. Mifflin giving me the angry eyes right now. Am I wrong, though? This is a Leviathans win of Season 9, right? 6-7 total kills in a 30-minute game, and they simply out-objective the other teams. We just didn't get the big, overwhelming team fight. The Dragons just never had the chance or the willingness or the desire to fight in this game.
Yeah, I took the 2 minutes it takes for us to walk from the desk to where I go to sit and watch these games.
Yeah.
I sat down, I immediately look up, and I see LASBRA dying at level 4.
Yep.
And I said, go next. I mean, GG. That's it. Your rat died pre-5 up against the Hebo. Good luck. Yeah, good luck getting back and involved. And I believe it. I looked up again at 12 minutes and saw LASBRA up to, around that 2,000 damage mark. Ends the game at 5,000. And I looked over at Adapting, who's sitting comfortably at around 13 to 14,000. So you're right to say that it's vintage and pace from the Atlantis Leviathans. Get a couple of small wins early. It is medium-sized wins into some big wins, and nobody showed up to stop them. Nobody showed up to slow them down. There were no speed bumps in that road. Maybe one Phoenix Siege goes a bit longer than the Leviathans would have liked, but I would argue about as good a game as you could hope for.
No, it's not this like crazy knockdown, drag-out, constant brawling, fighting type game, but I feel like that's got to be cathartic in a way for this Leviathans team to finally get a win in a convincing map control objective and a very clear decision tree type of matchup. And it shows that this team is capable of that, which is a lot of the conversation we've been having around, yes, Sheento's on ping. Yes, the expectation is that he improves some of his play when he gets here into studio. However, outside of that, this Leviathans team hasn't shown us much of this, which is their identity and their willingness to group and fight around these objectives. Now, the concern, and this Dragons team will be fine. This is just game number 1, a chance to take us 3 and win this set. But the concern is that this Dragons team has lost games like that a few times, not only this year, but this core of Nika and Dardez and Vote, and even LASBRA teams sometimes, and PBM teams, they'll lose games where they simply just don't show up, and the objectives spiral away from them, and happens a bit here in game 1. top 3 of Game 1 picks and bans were convincing for the Leviathans. We'll see what changes up in P's and B's for Game number 2. I mean, I'm thinking about getting a Marty, a Horus, and a Hebo in the top 3. That's a dream start for just about every team in this league. Luckily for the Dragons, they will be in the first pick slot. Now, remember, the Dragons had the opportunity to pick the Horus. Chose not to do so, went Aphrodite and Hercules instead. Again, just not much fighting happened in this game, so it's hard to really break down the efficiency of the team fights. But big change up now is the Leviathans will take the Martichoras off the board. And this is where the Dragons have to really consider things. Vamana's still strong enough to ban away. And I wonder if the Leviathans maybe get a sense that Dragons aren't going to be first picking Horus because they balked at the opportunity last time.
It's got to be Serqet, right, from the Leviathans here.
Could be for LASBRA.
Just seems like LASBRA spent the back half of Season 9 having that pick banned away from him. Gets a couple of games on it here in Year 10. Has an absolute standout performance. Has since then generally seen that ban towards him once more.
Is it worth a first pick in your mind?
It might be, because Adapting has also played the Serqet recently and would very likely take it in that second pick position. Yeah, I'm thinking if the Jade Dragons want Serq, they're going to have to take it here.
Hebo being banned, I think, makes this more interesting, right? Especially now that Serqet comes at a premium. If it was Serqet and Hebo both available,
You're willing to trade it a little bit.
Right, one or the other. Not the case. If Serqet is what they need for LASBRA, then you got to take it here. But again, then you're leaving open the likes of the Horus. Hercules will still be there, so you can trade out those picks pretty effectively. So a chess match already in picks and bans for game number 2. Seems like the Dragons just need something where they feel like they can contest these objectives, because the gold lead wasn't all that crazy, right? It was 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 gold on the first rotation of things, and then eventually they give up those, and things get out of control. Horus is the selection at a 100% pick ban rate, and Myth a 62% win rate across 13 games played. Leaves open the Serqet and some other options for the Leviathans.
Yeah, they can go for like the Hercat, you know what I'm talking about?
That's
like
right.
a little Hercules Serqet action over there for the Atlantis Leviathans. I mean, I wouldn't hate it. You've got some flex potential. More often than not, it's going to be Hercules in the solo lane. Serqet has been a consistent pick for Adapting. One that he's had phenomenal performances on recently. Has a decent matchup into the Horus, and that you're denying the healing from that pick. So if you're worried someone's going to escape with 5 HP because Horus hit him with a 120 heal, don't be. Serqet will make sure that does not happen. So a lot of potential here. Aphrodite still available. I would argue Aphrodite not nearly as valuable as we were once led to believe. Feels like that pick is elevated by Jake. I've been really impressed by his Aphrodite in particular. So I think the Yemoja pivot, probably just smart. You're getting a little bit of healing for the entire team. You're getting a bit more consistent initiation. You're forcing out a defensive relic from the Jade Dragons. Now it's likely, with this Yemoja locked in, if it is locked in, that there will be a Phantom Shell pickup or something along those lines. And Yemoja just tends to be really good in lane as well. Just a high-pressure pick, regardless of whatever hunter you match her up with.
Do you think that Adapting was giving the heart to me?
To you?
Yeah, do you see that on camera?
Yeah.
He knows his camera light came on. Do you think that was to me?
You know, that actually reminds me of, I think it was Bo Burnham that had said, when I look at you, I see a camera. When you look at me, you see me. Yeah, what you've got there is called a parasocial relationship, Dave.
Is that how we are with the rest of chat, though?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at chat right now, and it is what I assume to be a $4,000 camera with googly eyes on it.
And a small party hat.
And a small party hat.
Chat, you look great today. Thanks for being here with us. Horus, Fenrir, Cern, top 3 for the Jade Dragons. So they get some aggression, Myth, and some initiation early. They get one of the top AD carries, the ADCs, and over on the flip side, the Leviathans will answer back with Yemoja and Serqet, as well as Guan. So double healing type composition already starting to take form for the Leviathans, which Myth, this style of composition has been doing a lot of winning in the SPL.
Yeah, I think if you're going to draft healers, you kind of need 2 of them. With the global healing nerf in year 10, just feels like 1 isn't enough. Yeah, okay, I'm healing for 100 every 5 seconds. Well, 100 healing is not exactly a whole lot. Get 2 of them, and it's 200 every 5 seconds. If Guan Yu's one of them, it's 200 every 3 seconds because he's giving over CDR to everybody. So I think this style of composition, one that we're going to become accustomed to seeing as the year develops. Just really synergizes well with each other. Toss
right.
another healer on top of it, and all of a sudden you don't want to take a team fight around a fire giant, or if you do, you want that initial start to the team fight to go very well for you.
Merlin panned out by the Jade Dragons. Might have been nice to have easy application of Divine Ruin, but there's still some options out there. Does that, in your mind, now you see a Cupid alongside the Guan, does that change maybe where you're going anti-heal-wise with your pick out of the mid lane if you're the Jade Dragons? Are you feeling like, okay, we now need to kind of pivot into someone who can build Divine Ruin and who can apply it effectively?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it does not necessitate it because there are really strong anti-heal options outside of Divine Ruin.
Yeah.
The Onks, the Brawler
Yeah,
Beat
that's true.
Sticks, the
That's true.
Contagions, things that could just stick to the back line could still apply it. But ease of play is what your composition is built for. You want your draft to make it as easy as possible to win the game, and I think one of the easiest avenues for that is someone that can consistently apply anti-heal from a safe range. Picks available that fit that archetype. Thoth comes to mind as a very strong applier of Divine Ruin. Agni comes to mind as well. But when you look at the most recent selections from Dardez, maybe a Tiamat starts to show up a little bit. Maybe something like Morgan Le Fay. She's got that massive range on that third ability.
Apwash.
Comes to mind. Apwash as well, but maybe not as much. Because now I'm looking at this draft from the Jade Dragons, and I'm not all in on it. I don't know where everything's going. I think likely Fenrir jungle, Cern duo, right? They lock those in. That's simple.
Yep.
Is it Horus support? Is it Eset support? Is Mike trying to run the Opwatch support?
Yeah.
Couldn't say. All I know is that none of those are consistent mid lane mages. Maybe it's Horus solo, Eset support, Opwash mid, Cern duo, right? And then you've got probably your best look at a composition here, especially throughout the early game. Either way, a lot of easy targets for a jungler. On a pick-based jungler for adapting, I'm looking at this draft and I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, this is one for the stat line.
Now, the concern raises for me only because we've seen one Janus game for Sheento so far this year. It was against the Kings. You went 2-2-6, which is a fine KDA, but it was a game where Sheento just wasn't getting much done. What do you think makes Janus a good pick, a bad pick, a viable pick here in this specific set?
It's high mobility. It's got CC immunity in the kit. It affords additional mobility to your team that is going to be very good at disengage. So I think the ability to peel for your allies probably very valuable here for the Atlantis Leviathans. Hey, let's fall back, resustain, boot and rally, get back in there, run into the fire giant pit type of play. Janus kind of facilitates that a fair deal. I'm not the biggest Janus supporter either, just because his damage output is a bit less consistent than I like from my mid laners. I want my mid laners to have it easy. You know, I hit a bit of CC, mid walks up, drops a Kraken, and then you just go in and make it happen, right? But Janus a little bit more so, I think, needs the stars to align. You need those downtown ultimates to be connecting. You need to be maneuvering that back line, distracting individual members of the Jade Dragons consistently. And it's hard to come by, especially at these very high level of play where people are used to playing against these very mobile mid laners.
Well, this is good news for – wait, no, this is bad news for everyone.
No, spin it positive.
I'm trying to –
Go ahead.
For Zapman haters, this is a good news.
For all you Zapman detractors out there, you're going to love what we have to say next.
Zapman picked a banned skin, so we had to remake the lobby, but we'll be getting into game number 2 here shortly. Who's he playing? Cupid. Wondering what that could have possibly been.
Like 80% of them, man. Like 80% of his skins.
He played the Zim skin, which is a really great skin.
We don't have the broadcast rights to that, Zapman. We might have just fined you if it was the one with beans for hearts, but you chose one that's copyrighted. Thanks, guy.
Is that like chimney sweep?
I don't
Cupid
know,
or something?
man. I don't know.
I got to admit, I have a distaste for Janus ever since he was on SMITE. When it was
okay.
Wasn't that Ronngyu who played Janus support? Isn't
That
it
is true.
the same team?
Yep, that's them.
Something about this Leviathan squad and Janus just doesn't sit right with me. I wonder about teamfight, though, with the Jade Dragons composition here, Myth, because it feels like between an Eset and an Apwash, you're able to kind of establish this big no-play zone, maybe objective secure zone. Do you look at this outside of the pick-based opportunities of the Leviathans? Do you think the Dragons then have their moments when the team fights break out?
I think should the Dragons establish an early game lead, a significant one, let's call it 2,000, they can roll it through an objective. If that 2,000 gold lead leads to the objective and that all goes Jade Dragons, the Atlantis Leviathans have a 0% chance of mounting a comeback. Legitimately 0% chance. Every objective is going to go to the Jade Dragons. The damage output's going to be incredibly high. The Fenrir is going to have really strong pick potential himself, and it's a run-it-down team that's super hard to deal with. If we get to 15 minutes and it's dead even and it's a 5-on-5 stack, I'm looking at this Jade Dragons draft and I'm thinking, wow, Fenrir got beads with Ragnarok. Eset had to self-peel with Circle Protection, keep the Sea Bears at bay, and then all of a sudden the team fight has fallen apart. That's kind of the dichotomy of this team that I'm projecting. I don't see a lot of middle ground here. I'm thinking it's run it down or get ran down.
Look, the jungle matchup, I guess heavily in favor of adapting, if you can say that in a 5-kill Leviathans win. But 3 of them are on the back pocket of the Hebo. About limiting early losses then, if you're the Jade Dragons, and LASBRA on this Fenrir providing some setup to the rest of the squad. I suppose there is still a world we're debating on exactly where some of these Jade Dragons picks lay out. And I think that could go into some of the analysis and really how the play on field ends up shifting around. But if I zoom out and I start to look at both of these teams and the importance of this matchup, because not only standings-wise are you looking at the Jade Dragons, who are currently 3 wins behind the Oni Warriors. Oni Warriors 5-0, Jade Dragons 2-2. We've got, 3 weeks, I think, of the SPL after this. Opportunity for the Jade Dragons to catch up with that first seed are going to be heavily limited if you end up losing this set, catching up from a 3-win deficit if the Oni Warriors continue to win.
And they will.
And they will continue to win, it seems. Going to be tough. On the flip side for the Leviathans, they're 1-4. This is about starting to build up some confidence and some momentum in your team. You lose a tough set against the Hounds yesterday. I think for the brain space of this Leviathans team, though it's been a less than fun start to your season, I think a 2-0 win against the Dragons could instill some confidence.
I think so. You definitely want that bounce-back performance. I'm certain that the Leviathans heavily favored themselves in the last matchup that they had up against the Hounds. Now showing, hey, guys, sorry, it was a bad day. We're going to play well against the Jade Dragon, show that we're still capable of competing at a very high level. I think important for the Atlantis Leviathans. And they've done a very good job of it so far, at least so far as the composition is concerned. I really like their 5-stack. I like how their team fight rolls through.
Yep.
I like their scaling to the late game, barring the Janus. I think there's a lot of good here, if only marred a bit by an incredibly high execution, hit or miss, Janus pick.
If only marred a bit by Zapman picking Invader Zim, Cupid,
so messed
delaying
up.
us. You know what I need, Miff? I need a double scoop of Godslayer
Go for
right
it.
now.
Go for it right now.
I was considering making it a bit where every single time I do an ad read for the Godslayer flavor, that's SMITE Advanced GG crossover. SMITE 30, I believe, is our code for 30% off.
One weekend only. That's this weekend.
This weekend only. 30% off. Other than that, you use code SMITE for 10% off. I was thinking every time I did a read for this, add one more scoop of of Godslayer in there. There's 100 milligrams of caffeine in each scoop.
Yeah, Dave, I'm going to give you some information, and it's on the bottle here. The literature is provided. You tell me if this changes your output or your decision-making process. Warning, recommended to not exceed more than 4 scoops within a 24-hour period. You think maybe that
well, it sounds like I can do 4 ad reads and still feel safe, as long as they're on a different day from one another.
Okay.
Is what that sounds like. I don't know. The pre-workout I take has
a
few 100 milligrams of caffeine in it sometimes.
I'm thinking there's a lot of stuff in here that isn't caffeine.
Yeah, but that's a good energy formula.
Of course.
So Advanced GG has a great energy formula, and there's a lot of big words on there, Miff, but I promise you those are all things.
This is actually all natural caffeine.
That's right. They aid and assist in your focus, in your energy.
It's derived from the green tea plant.
Interesting. I wonder what the word derived. I wonder what that means. You're breaking down green tea.
Well,
which is tasty.
I derived is something I added. It's just all natural caffeine from green tea is what it says.
All right, Miff, do you think I've missed any beats here for the Leviathans and the Dragons game number 2? Do you think we've
Did we talk about how important the set is?
We have talked about how important the set
Did we
is.
talk about the compositions and maybe how they scale?
Yeah, a bit.
Okay, what about the early game potential? Did we hit that?
I'm not sure we did.
Okay,
Who
all right.
Who swings earlier here? Well, you said early first 15 is important for the Leviathans, going even into that portion of the game. So therefore, I'm inferring that you feel like the Dragons have the opportunity to get going in the first 15.
Well, if we hadn't talked about it, now I can't
Yeah,
because
please do.
you've stolen it. that was like going to be my ammunition to buy us another like 30 to 45 seconds
ahead.
there. No, it's okay. You
Myth,
kind
what
of
happens
got
in
it.
the early game? Do you think the Dragons really roll out of the gate here? Do you think the Dragons have a double scoop of Godslayer rolling through their veins in the first 15 of this game?
I'm thinking they're going to need it. They're going to need it for sure. They don't want to show up to 30 minutes from even. I'll tell you that right now. That's a free little bit of advice from me, Mifflin, to you, Dave Olson, with 40 milligrams of caffeine rolling through you.
That's almost nothing.
Oh, my bad. I don't drink soda. Sue me.
So many more things have caffeine than just soda.
Okay.
Green tea being
Green
one of
tea,
them.
yeah.
Which this can
All
extract
natural.
some caffeine from. All right, so we've covered the early game. How about the mid game, Myth?
Just scraping the walk me through the 14-minute, 30-second, to 16-minute marker.
Here's what I want you to do. Load into the game in your brain right now.
I'm in.
And you are
I got 10,000 hours.
You're LASBRA. What are you doing?
I'm LASBRA. I'm buying Eye of the Jungle.
Yep.
Tier 1 Transcendence,
Yep.
a couple of potions.
Yep.
I'm showing up to speed buff. That's first things first, you know?
Right, so you rotate through the jungle, you clear the speed buff.
Speed buff's dead, for sure. It's
Yeah,
on my
it's gone.
belt. I picked it up.
Right, and you've helped out and maybe cleared some of the rest of the jungle. Jungle is cleared now.
Oh, man. All of it?
The entire jungle's gone.
I'm level 3.
You're level 3. What are you doing at level 3 if you're LASBRA? You going to sit in mid for a couple waves, maybe?
Depends on who that mid laner is. If it's, you know what? Actually, doesn't. If it's Eset or it's Opwash, I'm jumping on him. I'm popping my
LASBRA's
claw
on their
shard.
team, so he won't jump on his teammates.
Oh, you're right. Excuse me.
He's going to be jumping on a Janus, presumably.
Oh, God. I just saw the Serqet, and we'd been here so long. I thought he was the Serqet. No,
Right.
yeah. I'm LASBRA.
Yeah,
I'm Fenrir.
Yep. And you just cleared jungle.
And I just cleared jungle. I'm thinking to myself, man, sure hope I catch someone else in the jungle. Sure hope they show up here so I can pop my claw shard and really get active.
See, you don't. Well, you can jump on Eset and not Puch. You're not going to do anything. To
No,
them,
it wouldn't do
unfortunately.
anything to them.
Maybe
And I'm not even sure I want to. I don't even want to like jump near the Opwash. I'm not really trusting him to follow up. I'm thinking Eset. Yeah, let's go dual lane. Let's see if we can handle this Cupid.
You know, there's actually a nugget of analysis in all of this, I think, and it's that maybe dual lane, the old-fashioned LASBRA level 3 cringe gang could be an option
They're playing to it.
early in game.
What if it
number 2.
isn't? What if we're all wrong and it was never Fenrir jungle, and it was Eset jungle? You know, a little Sino play.
Mm-hmm. I have good news for all of us, including Mifflin and I. Game number 2 is ready. We'll see if the Leviathans 2-0 or the Dragons send us to 3.
Yeah, let's jump right into game number 2 with the Jade Dragons and Atlantis Leviathans. We'll see, maybe, Gore, if we get a little bit more activity from the Dragons this time through, because it felt like once those first few minutes of the game went through, once the invade at blue didn't go successful for the Dragons, they kind of took a back seat in game number 1. Now need a little bit more activism in game number 2. You got a little bit of fun there.
Well, and it's because even though it was Mifflin's reactions are just funny to me.
Right.
He has
true.
a direct line to my funny bone almost constantly. There was a lot of like little analysis points in there, and the one that is the most notable is the fact that the minute he realized that he was like, okay, so I got an Opwash in mid, there's a Serqet on the other team and a Janus on the other team. I don't care. Like if he's done farming the jungle, there's not a whole lot for him to do. And so maybe we'll see LASBRA go for some dual lane ganks. Maybe Dardez is going to show us a little bit of what this Opwash can provide. Right? A couple of games, we've seen Opwash getting banned. We've seen him maybe high focus. A couple of games we've seen him go to support, and we've kind of scratched our heads after the fact because it did not work out well, and a lot of people have told us since then we're probably not seeing it again. It's definitely been a very interesting pick. Good anti-heal, though. Good kind of denial of space, I think, in the team fights. So maybe they're playing for the late game, but again, Mifflin had kind of covered that. If you hit the late game and you're anything less than even, you're probably not too happy with your positioning. It's just going to be very difficult, right? You know, LASBRA, even with a stun, depending on Sheento's positioning, and especially if adapting's nearby, it's just going to be really difficult to get pressure in mid on a Janus, right? You can just walk through walls, or use his Rift to speed up, maybe walk away from you. He does a lot of damage in return. Pretty dangerous kind of scenario for your engage. Guan Yu has a literal horse at level 5, so unless you do something like super fast, he's just going to run away. And while Cupid has a dash, Yemoja has the Riptides, it feels like those are the most easily thwarted things. You can chase one down with Brutalize, you can jump after them. It definitely feels like that's like where your avenue is. But if I'm looking at the other side, I think you're having a field day if you're adapting. There's an Eset on the other side. There's an Puch on the other side. I mean, those two alone should make a pretty easy gank for you. Get a little bit of pressure. We've seen the chase down pretty easily onto a Cernunnos. He's got a dash. You've got 3. You've got so many ways to catch up to people that I think that adapting should just have a field day.
Adapting attempts to strike first over in solo, but yeah, he's got to hit the taunt first.
Yeah, that's a big caveat to the thing I just said.
But he misses that taunt. So Nika is able to dash away immediately. And no further fight to be had from the Leviathans. Now, last time, the Leviathans got their pressure from the Dragons trying to start things up in the solo lane. So now we'll see LASBRA start up in the dual lane. Zapman stunned out, will dash away, but he's met by LASBRA, will dive under that tower. Brutalize gets the kill. LASBRA starts off in the duo hop for the Jade Dragons.
Look, he had one opening, one opportunity, and he took it exactly the way he needed to. Good play from LASBRA, and exactly around the time he needed to. Gets him a small level up over adapting. Hell, since the blue buff invaded game 1, that's the first time I've seen LASBRA do anything. So really, it's a good time to get really active and try to carry this. It's still going to be difficult, right? That dual lane is pretty much where you're going to need to be. That kill's maybe a little easier. Could have been maybe 2 if Mike hits a stun. There's always going to be room for improvement, but that is a beautiful way to start the game after the way that the last one went. And so I'm going to keep my eyes on the Fenrir and on the Serqet. Watch where adapting tries to match the pace and where LASBRA puts some of the pressure. Once he has ultimate, beads, going to be regular cooldowns, you know, or at least should be in my mind. Sheento is going to have a CC immune ult, so maybe going to be difficult 2 times there that he's going to be able to avoid something the Fenrir can throw at him. But definitely a lot of opportunity in duo. Because Zap, after those beads are gone, is going to just still be the Cupid that he was a second ago.
Ronngyu. Bit of a CC chain from the Dragons up against him as he walks back into the lane. Slightly behind Mike. Just by that half-level nature of that assist coming to the Jade Dragons. For LASBRA to get things started off for his team. And definitely a position he needed to be. But as you say, Gore, maybe one of the biggest threats to LASBRA is the fact that there's a set of beads on every single member of the Atlantis Leviathans. The respect paid towards this Fenrir, to Nika as well, maybe even PBM with some of the CC he can provide early on. Because there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of players that need to have beads taken away from them for LASBRA to get something going. But at least for the Jade Dragons, getting something going this early in the game is a step in the right direction, considering their poor sleeper performance last game.
Yeah. The thing about the beads for a lot of the members of the Leviathans, or at least a couple of them, there's other ways to avoid a Fenrir ult still available in the kit. Admittedly, adaptings is probably the hardest one to execute on, right? Because you have to time it perfectly with when you are on your own ult. Other than that, CC immunity for fineokay also creates a lot of distance. CC immunity for Sheento also allows him to then generate a lot of distance, or at least a lot of potential distance, if they take the portals. So Zap and Ronngyu may be the ones that are going to be the worse off for it. But Fields of Love is a giant cripple field. Fields of Love stops a lot of the abilities that a Fenrir can follow up on. So if you have to use your beads, then you can drop your ult. That's going to limit what the Fenrir is capable of, at least in that few seconds. And so it gives you a small opening to try and get away. There's definitely a lot of room for LASBRA to find success still, right? Beads, massive cooldown. You know what, 180 seconds at base. And then even on the upgrades, you're still waiting way over 2 minutes. So, you know, he's got a lot of avenues for success. Unfortunately, right now, all of those avenues start with him or someone on his team getting those beads gone, opening it up for the next round of opportunity.
Haven't seen anything.
Nope.
Since that first gank. Mike trying to stop Zapman's back, but just being a little shy on the Spirit Ball. A little mistimed and not enough distance closed. So Zapman's able to go back to base. Adapting, rotating over with Ronngyu to the right side. Trying to get something going against Nika, but with that ultimate, it's difficult to catch Nika, so maybe go for LASBRA instead. Ult by Sheento and a portal in. He'll be picked up by Laz, but that's exactly what Sheento wants, to distract LASBRA, to set up for something else. But Dardez has killed Sheento. The damage from Empty the Crypts, the damage from the Puch ends up netting the Dragons a kill.
I'm going to be honest. I was so certain LASBRA was dead and that Sheento was out. I can't believe that happened. It does not match with what my brain expected from those moments, which is honestly just a good moment from Dardez, right? Empty the crypts, you had mentioned it, does a little bit more damage, does have that Doom Orb online, so a little more maybe than was expected from Sheento early on. Get the beads from Sheento as well because of a good ult from LASBRA. He used that for some CC immunity to disengage from the Levi's. I mean, it felt like a moment where LASBRA was coming out on the losing end of the trade, and I think alone he is. But you have that assistance, you have your teammate there, and that opens up so many opportunities to just get a single kill. But that single kill in mid can really start to skyrocket Opwash, someone we've seen do really well. If they can apply the pressure, especially with beads down on Sheento, they can definitely get get a lot going for them just out of the mid lane. Does come with a downside. Sheento's ult going to be up relatively soon. Again, CC immunity that's going to be provided on that. But also, all Sheento has to do is just not step too far away from a wall, and he's mostly safe in a lot of instances. Fenrir should still be able to follow up in a lot of them, but the portals let you go in places and directions and give you a move speed buff that really does make it difficult as an assassin sometimes to chase through. So we'll have to watch him. He's going for the ult though now.
And Sheento brings adapting over to give a drive-by hello. Shake of the hand over to the Jade Dragons. It's double stun by Mike and a lot of follow-up by Dardez. Adapting. 200 HP left on the Serqet. Dardez, only one damage item, is really starting to bring the pain to the Levi's.
And I got to give a lot of credit on that getting thwarted to Mike. But I'm also going to give credit for this Fury pull, and it's just because of that. Circle of Protection makes things so much easier for a team like this. This is, if you're ever seeing a team play Eset, period, that's why they're doing it. It's because that ultimate is so good. Look, stuns are nice. The silence is actually fantastic, and that's what I want to touch on in a second. But that ultimate around these objectives is just going to out-secure, especially anything in this game. Sheento, maybe with his ultimate, is able to get something done, but he doesn't have it. You don't got to worry about it. And so it's a very easy secure for Mike. The other part of that is the gank gone wrong, right? Sheento drops the ult, him and adapting, going through the portals. They get right in front of Mike, and Mike hits him with a silence, and that just completely cut their potential off. All of a sudden, they go through the next portal. They still don't have abilities. Zapman's already running backwards. Or, sorry, Vote's already running backwards. And so all of a sudden, you're in a spot where you're just like, you know what? I don't think we're going to get anything done over here the way we wanted to. And if they had stuck around, maybe we see a kill even go for the Dragons. Instead, they kind of get I don't even know if I want to call that a TKO. They just kind of force the Leviathans to fall back. And you've got the burn. You've got the objective control. I love to see them play proactively like that, and especially, again, after Game 1, this has been a much better pace of game for the Dragons.
Leviathans already nearly lost out on their Tier 1 tower. Sheento holding on to about 20% of that tower's HP as PBM playing aggressive on this Eset. And this is at least the pacing of the game that Mifflin was establishing and saying that the Dragons needed to win out on these first 15 minutes. Get that lead, be ahead of the Leviathans, because come maybe team fight stage later on, this Dragons team is behind. Could be difficult to fight into Guan, Yemoja, Cupid, such a devastating area control that those would have. So far, the Dragons don't have to worry about that point because they're winning out in the early game. Almost a complete inverse of game number 1, Gore, whereas the Leviathans were just winning out on this non-confrontational style of play. Now it's the Dragons doing the exact same.
I don't want to feel like a naysayer. And I'm not. I think the Dragons are in a beautiful position, right? I'm not disagreeing. In fact, actually, with this kill on the Zap, they're going to do exactly what I was hoping for, which is saying, you know, it was about 2,000 gold. That's nice. 10 minutes in, 2,000 gold feels really good. A little more than that, suddenly you're at the tipping point where you are dominating the game, right? And that's what I wanted to see, was hit that point where you can say, this is the Dragons game right now. This moment, if you take a snapshot right before Zap goes down, kind of goes back and forth. Now they get a Pyromancer, plus they got that kill on the Zap. Suddenly, it's become a lot difficult. They're a lot more difficult, a very different horizon for the Leviathans. You're now looking down the barrel of 3,000 gold. You're now trying to figure out, where do we have pressure? Yes, we've got a little bit of experience, at least in mid ahead, but Zapman's 2 levels down. You know, adapting is unfortunately right now 1 level down. Where are you trying to get engaged? What are you going to be able to get aggressive on? I still think it's through the Serqet. The good news is their job at this point, and maybe bad news depending on what you were hoping for over the next few minutes, they can just prolong this, right? Because as long as the Dragons aren't getting so far and above ahead, 3,000 at 10 minutes, fantastic. 3,000 at 30 minutes, it's kind of normal, right? And so if they can really stall this game out on the Leviathans, it gets a lot easier for their composition, especially in late-game team fights, to fight into what the Dragons have. They're good at pick-oriented draft. They're really good at finding individual kills, maybe picking someone like Sheento up off of mid, especially if beads are down or anything like that. In worst-case scenario, you force those relics. Once the team fights come around, there's a lot more to worry about from the Leviathans. And I think the Dragons have to get this lead even higher than it is now, and more controlling, more dominant on the map, more force applied to the Leviathans, or else it doesn't make as big a difference.
Adapting doesn't have beads, and that's an easy target for LASBRA. Dardez, credit to the kill, but the setup there by Mike and Laz to hand deliver that one to Dardez. 2-0 now on the Puch. Sheento traversing through the jungle on the Janus, already used his portal, has ultimate just in case he needs a bailout, but it has been power farm mode for this Janus. Ever since Sheento had his first spill, he has essentially given up fighting and just gone straight for the farm to late game.
Honestly, I don't hate it. Again, I think that this composition later on, even with this small lead that the Dragons have, the Leviathans have a good comp for team fights. So farm up, get to the point where you're waiting for groupings. You're 13 minutes in. The accelerated pace that the Dragons has set means that at this rate, you're probably going to have to give up another Fury, maybe a Pyromancer, right, if you can at least keep a little bit of presence over there. But it's not the end of the world if you do. And I think that's really what the Leviathans need to think about is a good shutdown kill onto to Dardez or LASBRA shifts away some of the pressure, but experience is actually more or less in their favor. Again, a deficit for Ronngyu, just now ticked to 9, so let's call it like 2 3/4 of a level. Definitely a little struggle for the support. 2 levels down, about a level and a half really for Zapman. So the dual lane for the Leviathan suffering, especially after that early gank, and then doubly so when Zap gets killed again. But like you had mentioned, adapting, farming up, keeping pace. Sheento farming up, keeping pace. I mean, adapting went for the Transcendence. He wasn't looking for the immediate fight anyway. And so I like what they're going for now.
Fight around the Fire Giant. Nika will heal up his ally. They 4-stack the Levi's on the right side of the map. Even Zapman making his move over towards mid, but just to secure at least the green buff, make sure to give that one over to his support. Question is, will Zapman stick around the mid? He's ran right into the Dragons, will beads right through. Fields of Love is down. Bailout for Sheento with the ultimate, but not much more to be had there. Dardez, the Dragons, they walk right through the Fields of Love. They don't have a care in the world for what Zapman's got to say.
And honestly, I really appreciate what Zap does in that moment, right? Tries to stay aggressive, tries to keep things going, but kind of recognizes it as I'm just stopping you from killing me. I'm not actually in a position to kill you. Maybe with adapting in Sheento a little faster, maybe a slightly better angle on the ult, and especially if it connects, they're getting aggressive, but I don't mind, again, them playing this a little more patiently. Downside is Circle of Protection wasn't used over on that Fury that was just secured for the Dragon. So still have to worry around these objectives about Mike and Mike's existence in general.
Oh, Mike and Dardez will use ultimates. The Dragons steal away the Pyro and the fight. Ronngyu taken down by Nika. A jump away for adapting as the Jade Dragons focus their attention to the Fire Giant question mark. All ultimates were used in the fight. Maybe wise not to continue it. But objective steal and a pick for the Dragons. Now 5 on the board. No answer back for the Leviathans.
And you know what we're seeing here? We talk about the identity of the Dragons a lot this year, and it's because you've got 3 different mentalities, 3 different team identities, I should say, from the past coming and kind of converging, right? Nika, Dardez, and Vote. If you drop a pin at any point in the season over the last year, except for pretty much phase 1 of Season 9, where the Warriors were doing pretty well. I think they got top 3, if I remember correctly. Outside of that, this team was not known for aggression. It was not; these 3 were not necessarily known for controlling their lanes that well. I mean, they just kind of did. Dardez, I think, still looked good in a lot of moments. Nika still looked good in a lot of moments, but the team just never got the wins. And it would be that one would pop off while the others didn't. Now, you bring in Mike, you bring in LASBRA, and you're getting some major identity, I think, input into this, right? This team right now, they're playing the way that a Dragons team would have played any year that Mike is leading them. And I feel like that identity being brought in, but also being able to match some of the late game team fight compositions that they've played, being able to play into LASBRA's strengths, I think they've done a really good job of kind of taking all 5 of their players and showing what they can do. It's just getting it consistent, right? Because this game looks fantastic. It's 5-0. I mean, that's almost as many kills as there were in the entire last game. Last game was an example of what we want to avoid, right? And so I think if they can just make this the consistency, make this the average for the Dragons, they're in for a hell of a season.
Vegas by Sheento, and he may have needed that. Because the damage output by Dardez, 3 items deep. Not sure if that would have entirely killed Sheento, but definitely would have put him at critical HP at that point. So now, where do Leviathans even fight back in? They're down 5-0, 5,000 gold. They can't even find a pick against Nika because he goes right to the sky, and he'll hop his way out of this team fight. Attempted fight by Leviathan. Sheento even throwing the ultimate, but just a little off the mark, maybe expecting that Nika would walk a little bit further towards the Fire Giant pit, but missed out on a kill due to Leviathans, and falling behind, they continue to do so. Man, I just felt like I talked like Yoda there for a second.
Hey, and you know what? You're
Missed
only
out on
like
kills they did.
I was gonna say you're only 2 days late for
Dang,
Star Wars Day,
1 day late if we count Revenge of the 5th.
and I do.
So I'm only a day behind.
Yeah. So only like a little bit of brain lag.
Day late and $1 short.
Exactly. And you know what? It's kind of where the Leviathans feel like they're at right now. That would have been a massive kill. They could have gotten LASBRA right there.
Oh. Fire Giant for the Jade Dragons. fineokay is here, but there's not much that he can do. Runic Bomb's in pocket. The Jade Dragons sneak away a Fire Giant at 18 minutes. What will the Leviathans do? Sheento's portaled away to try and create some space for himself, steal away a buff, but LASBRA right behind in, a quick taunt away, through space and time used, as well as the ult from adapting, but LASBRA is just fine. The shell to eat through most of the damage from that ult of adapting. Leviathans are able to break out, but it's the Jade Dragons who get the fire.
And you know what? Your question is the one that I'm really excited to see the answer for. What do they do? 18-minute Fire Giants, and anything less than that, honestly. While last year were the standard, the pace of game was dramatically different than what we've been experiencing so far this year. You're not talking about Phoenixes unless you are, if you slaughter the other team. Like, I mean, it has to be so one-sided for something this early to really make that big a difference on the map. And so it is that question, what do they do with it? Can they get some of these tier 2s? How many, if so? Is it just going to be some of these objective plays? Like, it is like the question, I think, of how successful they'll be on the map. And by no means is a Pyromancer into a Fury play, especially an Oni Fury play, a bad play for a Fire Giant. It's just that want for more, right? And it is just set up. If you're looking at what is happening right now, either you get a pick, which is massive if you're the Dragons, or you get all this gold in pocket with no answers back from the Leviathans. You back, you spend it, and when the Fire Giant does respawn, you're just in such a good spot the Leviathans are going to struggle in the team fight. Unfortunately, they're getting just as much pressure on the map without a Fire Giant as you're getting with a Fire Giant. Sans the 2 objectives, they at least match the tier 2.
Zapman, beads gone, dash by Nika, circle of protection by PBM, gets both beads and Aegis away from Zap. He'll live. His tier 2 will not. It's answered back by the Leviathan, so a trade out of the tier 2s on opposite fronts of the map. The Jade Dragons have taken so much. They got Fire Giant, Pyromancer, Oni Fury, and a tier 2 tower. The Leviathans have only mitigated one of those so far. And all of that, Gore, all of those without a single kill added to the tally board for the Jade Dragons. They're pulling the exact same thing the Leviathans. They're just walking up. The Dragons are taking whatever they please, and the Leviathans have no answer back. Thought maybe Nika would go in towards the Phoenix, but now seeing 3 Dragons standing by will instead turn tail back to the jungle. The Dragons will march over to right side.
Well, we just watched. So PBM just hit 17. Ronngyu just hit 14. So that is full 3 levels separating the supports. That's the biggest gap right now, right? Adapting's about a level and a half behind, which is definitely slowing the pace down. I mean, outside of like a taunt early on that didn't connect, I don't think we've gotten to see pretty much anything out of the Serqet. A couple of ults, right? But otherwise it has been moments like this, and man, I'm going to call it that.
Man.
That might just be the thing that gets the Dragons the next FG, right? 40 seconds before Adapting's back, 40 seconds before it respawns. They might even be able to force a Phoenix out of this. I mean, worst case scenario, you've got a fight that's going in your favor. I was just about to talk about the fact that if Adapting can farm up for the next couple of minutes, then they could take this next Fire Giant fight. They might need to hit the reset button on my thinking.
Well, Rivers rebuked by Ronngyu, locks in a couple. They do have the shell to heal up, but as well as Mike's ultimate, Vote's going to need all that healing because Sheento's doing a lot of damage. Vote taken down, and Nika bails the squad out from a potentially worse situation. Mike really dropped that ultimate deep in the Phoenix pit because of that. All the Dragons step too far forward, and now it's the Leviathans who are turning their sights to the Fire Giant, and it's up to the Jade Dragons to answer the call.
This is one, man, if they get the Fire Giant, I'm trying to do like the mental equation. How much does it give the Leviathans? If they get a pick here on the Mike or anybody really, that makes this game so much easier.
Mike just barely gets through, but
There's Zap.
Zapman weaves in and finds the last auto. And now it's Nika running.
Run for fire.
He'll be able to get out. The Leviathans were turned tail immediately, straight to the Fire Giant. And a beeline for the objective. LASBRA's here, no ultimate, or ultimate up, no beads, I should say. He's going to have to do a lot. He stepped on a ward to the backside. The Leviathans know that LASBRA's here, but they're still going to do the Fire Giant anyways. fineokay goes into Dardez, and the Leviathans will get the Fire Giant. LASBRA turned on immediately. Heart Bomb will take him down. The Leviathans, who have been down 6,000 gold to start this one, are steamrolling right back into this game as they use the portals for Sheento in his ultimate to close up the cap. And finds the taunt onto Dardez, but he gets the beads and the Aegis away, and immediately the Leviathans, they lose out on their pick, but they've got fire on all 5.
They've got Minion Wave on right as well, and as of now, it's still a 5v4. They can just go in, try to get aggressive, get something done on right.
Fields of Love do proc the Wing Blade of PBM, and that's enough for Leviathans to have to back away. They get their movement speed, not from just Zapman, but Sheento as well. But it's a go right back in. fineokay locks down Vote, falls through the portal.
They got
the Rivers Rebuke to lock him in. There's nowhere for Vote to go as Zapman picks up a killing spree for the Leviathans.
And this is why all of that late game conversation existed. This is why we said the Dragons needed a massive lead, because this is what this composition is built to do. You just gotta wait. And we were waiting, and honestly, I thought that kill onto Adapting might have been the final nail in the coffin for the coffin for the Leviathans. I thought him dying in mid, the way it happened, was going to be it. But then they get that pick on the Mike. All of a sudden, you're in a much different conversation. You're able to get aggressive. Now, we're not at a Dragons full-on lead. Yes, technically the gold's in their favor right now, but that is not enough for a composition like this to be in control. You're looking at Rivers Rebukes that are going to be fantastic. fineokay, who's had some really good engage. The Dragons are not out of this game. And assuming they can secure this Fury, they will remain not out of it.
Nika. He's got the ultimate. He'll bail the team out. Dragons get the Gold Fury. Man. Leviathans let that one slip through, but have now shown their fight back. And Gord also feels like just the siege under the Phoenix too. Not just Mike getting caught on the right, but Rivers Rebuke used by Ronngyu. And instead of the Dragons using their Phantom Shell to get out, they used it to go back in. And then unfortunately end up causing Vote to go down. Now the Leviathans have effectively simplified this game for themselves. Maybe kind of going back to what you said earlier on, Gord. I mean, 3K at 10 minutes, starting to be a big deal, but 3K or even less at this point as we push 25, 30 minutes. Right where you'd expect a game to maybe be as the Leviathans push up towards mid.
Doesn't have as much of an impact, right? The itemization you're seeing is pretty much equal across the board, right? A lot of the big power spikes have been attained. In fact, you got more crit online right now for Zap than you're getting out of Vote, so maybe even hitting harder from the Cupid. It's just about the engage. Sheento, I think, has been on point. Look, Unstable Vortex. It's one of those abilities that it's changed kind of a bit since it was first introduced, but you hit that double tap, it does so much damage and does so much to these enemy gods, and that, I think, is where they've been finding a lot of their bread and butter here for the Leviathans, is just suddenly you're down 500 more health than you expected, right? And then you get crit for another, let's say, 300, 400, 500, and it changes the scope of a team fight in the blink of an eye. It's not enough, you know, for the Leviathans to get a Phoenix. They did save their own, so at least making sure the map state starts to shift in their favor. But this next team fight, while before I kept talking about the fact that maybe the Leviathans can step up, maybe the Leviathans can do something about it, that's all the Dragons now. What can they do? How can they step up? Mike's got the better secure. He's got the better options when it comes down to making sure this Fire Giant is theirs. Can he make it happen? Is the other question. Can he not get picked off? Can he not get zoned out? That's what the Leviathans are going to be looking for. All it takes is adapting, getting to the back. You're still in a mobile mage. A Serqet eats them alive. You've got portals to get you back there alongside her mobility, alongside the blink. I mean, there's a lot of instantaneous engage from the Leviathans. Meanwhile, you get like the opposite effect. fineokay gets to step forward, gets hit with some, admittedly, maybe not, you know, it's PBM, so it's not like you're building for damage, but it kind of shrugs off everything that gets thrown his way for the Guan. They've got healing. This is definitely going to be difficult for the Dragons. They were really good at picks. And one pick on a high priority target, you get rid of Sheento adapting or Zap here, that would be a massive play to get you back into this game into a commanding position.
Sheento will head back to base. It's the call now for the Dragons to move forward. LASBRA trying to go for a bite up against adapting, but can't land. Cannot find a target this time through. Ultimates from the junglers down. Maybe most valuable of those is LASBRA's being taken. Because that repositioning, that beads value you get from the ultimate, now wasted away. And all that off Leviathan's mid laner going back to base. Sheento decides, okay, I've got enough mobility, I've got enough gold, I can go back and spend. Not cost anything for my team. It's now a startup with a Pyromancer through. Leviathans do get it. They'll be able to pick up another Runic Bomb, 2 in pocket for Leviathans as the tango around the Fire Giant begins once more.
Man, it's such an awkward engage. The Leviathans would more than likely have pulled Fire Giant at this point to force a fight if it weren't for the fact that the Dragons are more than fine with them doing most of the damage. I mean, they're going to burn a Fire Giant with the builds they have, the damage they have online. That's not where the issue is. It's not can we burn it, it's can we secure it. And as long as Mike is alive with ult, the Dragons would be more than happy for the Leviathans to be the ones starting it. They'd also be happy to start it themselves because they know that they win the 50-50. They've got a weighted coin toss in their favor.
They've got the burn, they've got some secure, but there's also some Runic Bombs in pocket by the Leviathans to steal away the Fire Giant. fineokay goes down and adapting off to the side to escape away from LASBRA. He gets picked up, beads force, and a River's Rebuke response, but Nika crashing in has brought the entire Jade Dragons to the back door of the Leviathans. It's Ronngyu who might just get picked out. Caught in the middle of all four. It is 2 picks for the Leviathans and both kills going over to Vote.
They've got to play this carefully. Look, Sheento, has to get back to base. They're going to lose this Phoenix for sure. This could be a push into the Titan room. You need a little more aggression, maybe another pick. But all it takes is a misstep from the Leviathans. That's an easy, easy go button for the Dragons.
There's no front line for the Leviathans. The Dragons will just walk right in.
They still have Circle of Protection.
Half HP. Zapman goes through. And with the ultimates from both of the mages, the Jade Dragons should all but take down the Titan, tie up the set, and Gore, we're going to game number 3.
Look, Mike doesn't use the Circle of Protection on the Fire Giant, and at first, that feels like a mistake. Then they kill fineokay, and suddenly, it's, again, a different landscape. And if they do not have the Horus, if they don't have that chase down potential, then all of a sudden you are in a spot where you are zooming away from that. And the Leviathans are able to reset. They've got 4. They're fine. Horus gets them there. Horus surrounds them. And suddenly it's more than that. It's damage. It's separating the team. It's getting a kill onto the other frontliner who could have potentially staved away some of that. And Sheento goes down, thinks, they're going to go for Phoenix. That's going to be it. And then they keep staying aggressive. And he's on the other side of the map. His back comes in maybe a little too late. They don't get the defense that they could have liked. And unfortunately, they end up in that awkward spot. A 3v5. You can't really do anything about it. Your damage isn't good enough. And the Dragons play really well for 20 minutes, stumble for about 8, and get it back together right when they needed to.
Game number 2 almost parallel to game number 1. Maybe not nearly as exaggerated as game 1 was, but the Jade Dragons tie things up and take us to game number 3. And that's going to come down to which of these two teams can find that win in game 3. To do that, we got to take it to a quick break, and we'll come right back.
We gon' break up, then we make up. Act like we're gonna be friends. Flames the fire, take me higher. Leave it all over again, all over again. Leave it all over again, all over again. Leave it all over again. We gon' break up, then we make up. Act like we're gonna be friends. Blaze the fire, take me higher. Leave it all over again, all over again. Leave it all over again, all over again. Leave it all over again. Leave it all over again. Break up, then we make up. Act like we're gonna be friends. Blaze the fire, take me higher. Leave it all over again, all over again. Leave it all over again, all over again. Leave it all over again. All over again.
Our first set of the day is going all three as the Jade Dragons answer back in game number 2, and it's another slow-paced, methodical game. This time, we do get a bit more scrapping later on in the game, but we're going to the 20-something minute mark with only 5 kills on the board, a decent gold lead built up for the Jade Dragons, and comfort in their lead and their place in this game until the Leviathans make a play or two around FG. But it doesn't matter. Jade Dragons regain their composure and are able to close things out and send us on to a third game. And Myth, you were a bit of a prophet going into game 2 there. You mentioned, we joked about, what would you do if you were LASBRA? You said, maybe I'd go deal with this Cupid a bit. Sure enough, level 3, jumps on top of Cupid, gets a lead going, and they had a decent gold lead going into the mid-game.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this composition from the Jade Dragons, you got to know they're going to play fast. It's very good at dealing with objectives. So if they're able to establish enough of a lead, I think I called for around 2,000 before they rotate in towards the first Gold Fury. They're able to hit that checkpoint very easily. First Gold Fury comes, circle protection, just about unbeatable and secure. And the Leviathans ran into that wall consistently throughout this game. Just have Dardez, have Mike on Pyromancer, on Gold Fury, and the two of them together just not going to be dropping those objectives. And they didn't. And they were able to establish a very convincing lead. It was only that one fight back around the Fire Giant where the Leviathans essentially sneak it away that maybe brought a bit of a question mark to whether or not the outcome of this game was going to be a Jade Dragons dub or not. But afterwards, the Leviathans struggled a bit on their own siege, weren't quite able to break the base, and the Jade Dragons run back their playstyle of let's go jump on the Fire Giant. This time, though, don't use circle protection, but doesn't really punish them because they get a couple kills regardless.
I'm wondering if Leviathans are close to retiring the Janus this year. Played it against the Kings, went 2-2-6. That was a loss. Play it just now against the Dragons. Goes 1-1-3, literally half the KDA. I guess you're dying one less time, but you're also getting one less kill, a few less assists. You can't hang it all on Sheento, but the Janus just hasn't quite found its way into a winning composition for the Atlantis Leviathans just yet. And so you get these slow, methodical kind of burn games here, Myth. And, you know, we talked about the chess match of picks and bans. Wonder if that maybe affects things now going into game 3 where both teams lean into a slower paced composition that can contest around objectives.
Yeah, generally in a game 3 situation, the game slows down just because the stakes are a bit higher. Essentially a best of one
so.
now.
Well, we're going to have 2 kills in 20 minutes now?
You know, I mean, like, if I were out there, Dave, you know I'm getting active for you, all right?
For better or for worse.
Yeah, I'm here, though, and I simply observe.
You're getting active for me on the desk.
I'm trying my best.
You're pounding the fist, and you're analyzing, and you're thinking that maybe we are going to go more slow, objective-minded going into game 3.
I'm thinking so. I mean, it depends on compositions. The Jade Dragons might try and keep pace with what they had brought in game 2, which was a much faster style. The Leviathans just don't show up for defense, is why you don't see it in the kill column, but I would argue a very fast game from the Jade Dragons.
It's faster.
And if that works for them, and they think that's their best avenue forward, I wouldn't be surprised to see them run it back here.
Well, we flip-flop once more. It's the Leviathans in first pick, the Jade Dragons over in second pick. Horus is undefeated so far this set. I think that's worth looking at, where it's continued to do work not only across the league, but here the Leviathans win with Horus in game 1. The Jade Dragons win with it in game number 2. Serqet does take a ban, indicating that obviously adapting is not going to reach for it with that first pick. Hebo then banned by the Jade Dragon. So that's our first big pivot from game 1 if we're trying to compare Leviathans in first pick to Leviathans in first pick. That's how far back you have to go. And then finally, a Horus ban in this set has won both of the games for either team, as I've mentioned.
Hercules?
Things will look a little different then going into picks and bans for game 3. It's actually a Martichoras ban, first ban for the Leviathans. That's worth pointing out because that has also been highly prioritized here in this set. And you're right, something like a Hercules could look good for fineokay, though fineokay has been okay to leave his pick a little bit further on in the draft and play things like the King Arthur.
It was actually a hell ban.
It was actually a hell ban. So that means Marty's open.
And we're taking that one.
We're taking that every day.
We would have got ahead of that here if we had known. Of course, Marty locked in.
That's right.
Good damage output. Was not in the mid lane last time we had seen it. It was Zapman piloting this
actually,
pick.
yeah.
Not something that we've become used to seeing, but still has decent pressure, scales well into that late game. Does lend itself well to a double hunter composition. Doesn't matter what the other hunter is. Martichoras has got enough defense shred on his own that it just tends to work out.
It was the Nox. I was wondering. I was like, with the Horus ban now, what am I missing? What has been banned out? And I'm forgetting that the Nox has been pretty consistently banned And for good reason. There's a handful of these high-priority gods that are in the mid to high 60% win rate. Horus has got to be there, jumped from a 60 to a 62% win rate after game 1, must be at around 64% win rate across the SPL after game 2. Nox is there about, what was that, 12 or so games played and a 67% win rate here in the SPL. Nox plus Cern, probably one of the more sought-after duo lanes.
Just a ton of CC lockdown, good range damage, a non-committal initiator from that Nox, I think incredibly valuable. We've seen what this god can do in late-game team fights. When your cooldowns are as low as Nox's get, it's Shadow Lock, pray your team has got damage follow-up, and for the most part, if you've got a Hunter on your side or an Artillery Mage, you'll have the follow-up that you need. But maybe the most slept-on portion of Nox's kit is that Shadow Ball, the ultimate, doing so much at reducing the amount of damage your enemies can bring. It messes up your objective secure, it messes up your kill secures, things like that. So really is a very valuable pick.
Fenrir for the Jade Dragons out of the jungle was plenty disruptive. However, needed some wind-up time to really find that impact. And that was, what was that, game 1 where we saw the Fenrir? I don't know. My brain is all blending together.
Fenrir last game.
That was last game. Okay, so it was game 2. So it took a moment, but right, it was Ratatoskr for LASBRA in game 1. That's what I'm thinking about. So got things going for the Jade Dragons. What point do you consider a data pool of games enough to start taking the win rate into account? I'll provide an example here. So Nox has 15 games played, 67% win rate. I think that's enough of a data pool to say, all right, Nox is really good, it's been performing really well.
Call it 10 games.
Yemoja's got 7 or 8 games and an 89% win rate. Do you think you need a couple more games to feel really confident in that win rate, or is 7, 8, 9 games enough for you?
Well, considering the win rate's so high and you're already that close to 10, I'm saying 10's that threshold. Even if she loses the rest of her games, it's still above a 50%. Yeah, Yemoja's good. If that's the question, if we're getting to the crux of it,
I am.
Yemoja good or bad? Yemoja real good.
Okay, well, I wasn't asking if Yemoja's good or bad. I mean the high win rate percentage. We know Yemoja's good even if she's at a 50% win rate, right? But say Yemoja's 75% win rate looks crazy, but it's across 4 games. I feel
4 games? Yeah, we don't care.
Right, that's less meaningful than an 89% win rate across 8 games.
Agreed.
But at what point do you consider
it's a higher win rate and more games.
But at what point do you consider it a real, deep, meaningful stat?
10 games. I think 10 games is a good sample size.
Okay, thanks, Smith. I was just trying to pick your brain. So hostile.
What do you mean?
Are you hungry?
No, we got catering.
Oh, I know it was good.
It was.
It was tasty. Mercury, Guan banned out by the Jade Dragons. On the other side, wow, Puch carrying a bit of threat. Could go well into the healing and the sustain that the Yemoja wants to bring. Tier is 3 games enough to look at the 0% win rate that Tier has in the SPL this year. Has not won just yet. And this is a pick. Look, Nika, very talented, mechanically skilled solo laner. Can make it work. But maybe there's a reason we haven't seen the Tier work just yet.
You know, I'm a big Tier supporter. I've always loved Tier. I love the god pool or the play style of this god. Just get aggressive. You feel like an absolute tank when you're locking him in, not just because he is just tanky thanks to the defense he stacks up from the passive of his third ability, but also it's that actual passive of you can't CC me. Just feels like it's so difficult to stop him. But when I talk to all the other pros, barring fineokay, when I talk to all the other pros, they say there's no way a god can be good if he's completely countered by beads. Everything he wants to do just countered by beads. And when I said, isn't burning beads valuable? And they said, well, he's doing it to one guy, and it's just about one guy before he's either dropped too low to continue fighting, or maybe is forced to reset to resustain. So difficult, I think, to quantify the exact value of a Tier. But if fineokay likes him, I could sing the praises of what Tier does, which is decent pressure in lane. At level 6, it feels like you become unkillable. That's when around the time you get that 3rd point in the power cleave, so your self-sustain rather, through the roof. You start stacking up some of that defense. You can be very disruptive in the back line. It's going to operate similarly to what we saw from Sun Wukong, just really good at jumping into the back and sticking to a Marty or sticking to a Tiamat and making sure they can't do what they want to.
Sobek, Miff, some lower play rate gods starting to get picked here. Sobek with just the 1 game played so far in Season 10. Tier with the 3 games played. Synergy with the Awilix, name of the game now for the Atlantis Leviathans. You got a bit of it built into to your composition here, and Sobek just adds a little bit more.
Yeah, the Riptide sets up for Gravity Surge, so you've got that every single time. Knock up from Tiamat, the exact same thing. Sobek has been in an interesting position because he's got 2 ways to proc Gravity Surge for Awilix. You can either be the pluck and grab them while they're midair from that. It's a little bit less consistent late game. I believe it was iRaffer 4 years ago that had said, if they beats me late game on Sobek, I just die, and that's the truth of it.
Yep.
It seems like that's probably still the case. Damage output in year 10 seems to be a little bit higher than it was in year 9. So what are you going to do with the Sobek? Blink Tail Whip does the exact same thing, dash out, and all of a sudden you've got a Gravity Surge on whoever you knocked up with that Tail Whip. So I think a very safe pick if you decide to play that way. You've got a little bit of objective secure from the lurking in the waters. Great chase down potential on some of these less mobile targets. So often Agni's going to dash away. Sobek can dash to keep up, immediately start channeling that slow and let the rest of his team chase out with him. I'm not going to say Sobek's a consistent pick. We don't have the 10 games this year. Not just yet.
I don't know if we're going to get there.
And we're probably not going to get there. And even in year 9, wasn't exactly the most consistent pick there either.
Oh, Gore has us all. Oh, I can tell you, Sobek. This is good. I'm learning how to use Gore's data sheet. How many games total do you think Sobek has played all time?
All time? It's got to be in the high hundreds, maybe like 180.
All time.
Oh, all like
regular
year,
season,
like
all
season.
time.
How far back are we going?
All
time?
How far?
Let's call it 600.
You're 946.
All right, man.
What do you
Sobek
think?
was really good for a while there.
Wow, his win rate is eerily close to 50% all time. 475 wins.
Carried by seasons 1 through 3, I guarantee.
475 wins, 471 losses. So, data-wise, you're at 49.
What's he done for me recently?
Or 50.5 or something like that win rate. A few more losses on Sobek. We're getting to exactly a 50% win rate. Yeah, hasn't done much here recently. Agni has done a lot, though, recently, Miff, and it feels like the type of pick that Dardez has also enjoyed leaning into before he gets here in the studio, provide some good space control. What attributes are you assigning to this Jade Dragons composition?
You've got really massive threat on Relic. Cern, Nox, Fenrir, Tier, all going to put pressure on the beads, pressure on CC immune ultimates. So team fight phase, I think, is more so what can you do on first wave? Is the stun from Agni burning up beads? Is Tier able to get into the back line, get those relics? If yes, fall back, reset, and then you've got a clear target for the rest of the team fight. Let's jump on this guy. He doesn't have X, Y, or Z available to him. Throughout the early game, this is a very strong pick composition for the Jade Dragons. Anywhere Nox is a threat to life. I mean, just shadow lock into whoever's nearby, especially in that early game, can be very threatening for the Atlantis Leviathans. Come late game, though, they've got the Jade Dragons, that is, a little bit less threat on objective. It's harder to secure. You're not going to go for nearly as many coin tosses. You really want to get the fight started before you start looking at those neutrals.
Sobek, 223 games played in Season 2, by the way. Game number 3 against the Jade Dragons and the Leviathans. Let's find us a winner.
We'll see if that Sobek can bring a win here in year 10 of SMITE competitive play. It's the Leviathans and the Dragons, game number 3. To see who's going to be taking home the win and notching themselves an extra point in that win column, because both of them need it so desperately. It's J-Mac, Gore, and Doug here to bring in the action for game 3. Gore with the Dragons being 3 wins behind the Warriors so far in their division. The Leviathans 4 behind. A win for the Leviathans might potentially keep it out of reach of the Dragons to be able to take that top spot, because you got to think of the matchups that are still left for the Oni Warriors. They still got the Camelot Kings later to face. They still got to play against everybody in their division at least one more time, the Gladiators twice. So finding a win here for the Dragons, maybe a must if they want to try and take the top spot.
Yeah, I think that was the interesting thing looking at the standings. We were going over it earlier today. The Warriors have won 3 of the 4 out-of-division matches, which we talk about those being really important. It's just because that's 3 wins that they don't have to stress about, right? And suddenly, if you're the Dragons, if the Warriors and the Dragons had the exact same in-division win-loss record, and let's say their head-to-head was tied or whatever, those out-of-division matches are what makes that big difference. So winning those 3, they beat the Dragons once, they beat the Leviathans once. If you're looking at the Warriors right now, you're looking at a team, I think, tomorrow playing the Glads, and like you said, they have to play them twice. A lot on the horizon for them. but a lot of success that's already happened so far. And so there's definitely, I think, room. The Dragons trying to chase that. The Leviathans maybe being able to play upset to it, not just here, but potentially against the Warriors the second time they go up against them. And you got to think, I mean, look, the Hounds played incredibly well yesterday. I don't mean to take anything away from that because they did just look really good. But you have to imagine the Leviathans could say that today was at least a small win, a small victory, even if they lose here because they got the first game. It's definitely a turnaround. I mean, that was a rough showing for them yesterday. And I think a win here, while not necessary for them to find success, would definitely make them feel a whole lot better about where things have been going. Rough start for the season. Definitely, I think, a lot more growing pains than we expected.
Dardez and LASBRA really being jumped on by adapting. Using that Relic Shard to be able to reduce his cooldowns to use that Feather Step once again in the mid lane. Has adapting. Try and get some early pressure for Leviathans, but maybe not exactly what you'd expect. You'd think in the lane maybe the best way to go, but adapting feels maybe this fight in the jungle. Says dual lane. For the Dragons, locked down under Ronngyu, gets beads from Yemoja early. And if LASBRA can hit level 5 before those come back up, maybe a premier target for the Jade Dragons to try and focus out against the Leviathans. Because LASBRA, I mean, got active early in game number 1, worked real well for the Jade Dragons. Now maybe needing to find a little bit of that once more in game number 2, or sorry, game number 3, I should say. If the Dragons want to have some hope of finding themselves a win against the Leviathans.
A lot of pressure right now, I think, is on. Man, I don't even know where individuals that might suffer. Nika definitely needs to not fall down early. We've had a lot of good damage from adapting so far this game. And that's kind of what I'm keeping my eye on. It feels like adapting wants to fight right now, which admittedly on Hebo, he was getting very aggressive in game 1, right? A very successful run for him, but it was after getting first blood and very specifically getting first blood on LASBRA, which I think really, really heralded him to the successful state of game he was in. Now I'm at the point where, I mean, you're going to have a lot of pressure from him, good knockups that can come from Sheento. I mean, there's a lot of potential for this team to just feed adapting, and he will be eating well in those instances. So a lot of wiggle room for success. They got a lot of safety. Just in general, Ronngyu on Yemoja. For those of you who are maybe the uninitiated, just started watching, say, this year, because that was pretty much what it would take to not know this. Ronngyu is one of the best Yemoja players, if not the best Yemoja player in the world, to the point where several instances last year, it was, if you let this player have this god, it did not, who cares about the rest of the draft? They were winning the game. And I guess this is going to be a nice little heat check. A, does he still have that performance level in him? But two, is it going to be the same that we've come to expect, right? I kind of have high expectations anytime I see that name on this god. Let's just see if they can live up to it.
He's going to need to. Up against the Jade Dragons, who, even without a kill, starting to pull slightly ahead in the gold department. Not really any invades going through just yet. I mean, we saw adapting get aggressive inside the jungle. Didn't really put LASBRA at any kind of deficit. In fact, I should say, at least adapting does have a small XP lead, but Nika was the first to hit 5 in the solo lane over fineokay. Now he's pushing fineokay out. Waiting for that moment though, Cora, because in game 3s like this, especially when game 1, very slow paced, start out with the failed blue buff invade. Game number 2, very similar pace, where it's this very, very slow gameplay. Not a high kill count game. Game number 3 is shaping up to be potentially more of a slog than we saw in the previous 2.
Honestly, I feel like this is just the pace of game 3s, right? Almost all the time is being a little more careful. You get, actually, you get one of two. You either get 15 minutes in, 1 to 2 max kills on the board, that kind of game 3, or you get 15 minutes in, 12 kills on the board, right? You either get a bloodfest or you get something more like this, right? The team's playing a little patiently, recognizing missteps, especially after game number 1 and game 2, considering all it took was 1 kill in a lot of those instances, and we saw a team really start to take off with the lead. So I don't mind seeing adapting while trying to get aggressive, playing carefully. fineokay while trying to lead the way, playing a little further behind, and keeping themselves defensive overall. I think it's a comp as a whole. I mean, look, you've got a Sobek, a Yemoja. Both of those are just going to do way better. Like, your Warriors typically right now could maybe fight a little more. With the double Guardian, you're waiting a little while, right? You're waiting for them to be tanky. Sobek can get some things online. He can get some business done, but realistically, this is a comp that wants to play in late game. Outside of, I think, the Awilix, who can do a lot early on. Everybody else slams when they get to that late game damage spot. And that doesn't mean Awilix doesn't. It just means that Awilix can fight right now, too. And so I love the Leviathans kind of trying to keep this pace. Very similar to what we've seen of Leviathans of the past, which is play. 20 minutes goes by. You don't really care about what happens in them. You're playing for the team fight, and I think that's what this comp is going to do. Meanwhile, I see the Nox on the other side. Still can play a little for late, but definitely more aggression, especially with the Fenrir. I think for the Dragons available. Maybe more wiggle room for them to try and get a similar lead that they got in game 2.
After chasing out left side, Vogue onto the rivers, a fast dash out. And Mike is there to bail out. Does get the root onto Zapman to keep the Martichoras at bay, but Zapman's standing at the tower line to clear out the minions. Takes a little bit of poke through. Mike goes in, finds the root under Ronngyu only. Vote's too low to step forward in this. The dual lane of the Dragons has been effectively pushed out and under this tier 1 tower, while not much is happening elsewhere on the map. Some signs of at least appreciation from the junglers to show up towards solo lane, but not much to be done in either of the side lanes at the moment.
Yeah, realistically, you're playing against comps that are just super safe. Good disengage. Awilix might be able to find something, but considering Kern has a dash, Nox has a dash, right? It's not anything that's going to have massive knockups. And outside of a really sick Riptide that comes from Ronngyu, on the left side, adapting is pretty much on his own in terms of trying to set up for his own ult. And then on the right side, Sobek can pull him in, but it's a Sobek. So are you really going to be able to find that much follow-up damage? Maybe on your own, but it's tier already. You know, actually not a lot of physical protection because he's up against a magical god, so maybe some wiggle room over on right to get something done. And then you get to mid. And Agni has the same things going for him that Duo Lane does, right? A dash, very difficult to get the knock up. Sheento has one, but Tiamat's damage at this point actually could hit pretty hard, but I've come to expect more late game oriented out of a Tiamat. And it feels like, yeah, if you're adapting right now, you're farming. You're hanging out, man. You're just not getting a lot done. And it's not necessarily for lack of trying. It's just because there's no real point to it yet.
fineokay will ult the wave to resustain
You
his
cosplayed
mana.
this skin, didn't you?
I did. It was during the Summer Masters night. It was supposed to be both Trelly and myself, but Trelly was unable to make it that day.
You
so it's
even
just
had the shark head.
I did have the shark head. You had to wear one too. You didn't do the
You
shirt.
know what?
But
That
you
just
did do the head.
We just unlocked a memory that I think I had successfully suppressed.
That's
I forgot that I wore a shark head.
it's still my profile picture on Twitter. I still have the shark head. I haven't had a moment. Well, I guess I can't really say I haven't had a moment that tops that. Worlds was a really fun experience. Some really good
If you're
moments
trying
there.
to tell me right now that wearing
No,
a shark
no,
head
no.
on broadcast is better than the
No,
SMITE World
no,
Championship
not by
in
any
person
means.
for you,
I
I am going to punch you.
No, I still got to sort through and find some really good pictures from Worlds for me. Zapman rooted in place, and maybe our first kill of the game on to Vote. It's adapting, who strikes first for the Leviathans, nearly 10 minutes through. But it gets the job done, and the Leviathans can finally start their roll.
That's the exact kind of kill. Look, if you're looking for something, you got to keep the pressure up. You got to catch them out in the jungle. That is a beautiful rotation from the Leviathans. And again, it showcases where their strength is going to be. You get a kill onto adapting. That is what has led to success. And that's even with the Transcendence not even being fully stacked yet. So I think that's the shepherd right now, right? It is adapting, leading this team. Early game, a lot of damage. You had mentioned it. LASBRA and Dardez got pretty heavily poked out, like instantaneously, level 1, level 2, by the Awilix. Nice to see he's not only able to still do it at level 10, but honestly might be able to find more pressure, more poke, more picks like that.
Jade Dragons to the Gold Fury. No answer back from the Leviathans.
Yeah, there's not a soul in sight.
Now, first blood in our first couple of games was typically the indicator of which team was going to be setting the pace, establishing these objectives, but this time through, first blood for Leviathans, first objective to the Jade Dragons. That answers back to the first blood bounty and some, as the Dragons do take first major objective of the game. Nika loses out on blue buff. He's not happy about that, but fineokay will make sure that adapting is not punished for his efforts. Immediate pluck as soon as that Lawbringer lands.
I love the aggression that we're seeing from the Leviathans. I love the play call from the Dragons, though. I mean, we've been looking at a game that is a few hundred gold separating them. It's still just a few hundred gold separating, right? Nothing has really changed for the 11 minutes. The kill, the first blood bounty helping out, the Fury balancing that out. The map play at this point over the last couple of games has been where we've been able to really highlight when a team is finding success. And right now that's going to the Dragons, right? You might lose the first blood and maybe some of the other neutral farm that had not been going your way. But now that you've picked up a Fury, you've picked up a Pyromancer, you've got a Runic Bomb as well, this is where a team really starts to kind of set themselves apart. You don't need the fights, you don't need the picks. If you can keep playing the map this way, you're going to find yourself a lot of success. The downside is the other half of the conversation, which is what do you do when the Leviathans actually step up to stop you? It gets a little murkier in the water. I still, honestly, I'm leaning in favor of the Leviathan team fight. I just like the way that this comp looks like it works together. There's some good aspects, I think, of the Dragons, but a lot of it relies on an insanely good Fearless from Nika, good grab from LASBRA, Mike either getting a nasty silence or a really, really, really effective ult.
Adapting gets beats from LASBRA, fearing the knockup. The Adapting gets thrown out. It's a tier 1 tower feared away. And now a River's Rebuke from Ronngyu locks in Mike and Vote. Potentially another casualty. Vote uses the beads to dash away, but Sheento goes right in nowhere for Vote to go. But it's a 1-for-1 trade as Dardez takes down Adapting all the while in the midst of the fighting. The Leviathans, they get some aggression on the left, they get a kill, they get a tier 1 to answer back to the Dragons.
Honestly, I really like the pressure. Again, unfortunate fall for Adapting, right? I mean, he goes in, he had held onto his leap. After LASBRA used the beads, there was a moment where Adapting could have jumped on him, decides not to, falls back, is waiting for his team, then they all collapse in on Vote, but it's just a small, maybe lapse of damage, where that one beautiful River's Rebuke doesn't lock him in just long enough, right? Takes a little too long for the carries to get in, get the damage dump, and then suddenly you're getting to see him walk away. Beads are used, dash is used, Vote feels like he might be out, and that's when Adapting's leap gets forced, and at that point, you're kind of a fish out of water. There's a lot of damage being poured into one area, and Dardez just happened to have enough.
Nika pulled back in by Adapting. Double ult from Adapting and fineokay to try and lock down this tier. fineokay really wants to get this pluck onto one of these two. Gets it back onto Nika, and that's the fast beads from the tier. The Leviathans trying to reestablish the pace of the game. With their first blood, they lost a little bit of momentum with the objectives that went to the Dragons. Now the Leviathans are trying to answer themselves right back. Golden, dead even experience, slightly ahead for the Leviathans.
You see a lot of that mostly in mid. You see a little in support. Wouldn't be surprised if some of that's on Zapman, considering Vote has 2 deaths as well, right? So maybe not as massive of a lead as they've had in the past, but some really good control over important farm. Because like you said, with gold bouncing back and forth between the two, the experience on board, a level or 2 here or there, not a big deal, but if you can get Adapting to 14 while LASBRA's still stuck at 12, or get Sheento to 17, well, unfortunately, Dardez just ticked over to 16, so you're not going to be able to get it while he's stuck down there. And that's kind of the big, you need to extend that gap a little further if you want these fights to go so overwhelmingly in your favor that there's not much question around it. Dragons have been playing well around the objectives, though, making good calls on the map. With the Oni Fury up, I honestly thought we were about to see a rotation for him, but good ward coverage is at least keeping some vision. With Relics still down, specifically on Zapman, they should know those timers. might be a good time to put more pressure onto the left side of the map, whether it's around the Fury or if it's just around Zap in general, and make the Leviathans essentially force a call out of them, force a position change, see if you can get them to fight.
fineokay. Lurking in the right jungle. Nika will keep eyes while the Leviathans group up around the Fury. Adapting is here with Ronngyu. LASBRA on the way. Not a lot of damage just yet, as LASBRA will toss a ward up just to make sure he can keep vision whenever he's not there. With this Fury being started up, Leviathans really want to maybe swing up the shift of the pace in game. Score, we are right back to exactly how we were in the first 8-9 minutes of gameplay, where nothing's going on. Teams are waiting for opportunities to either find a pick, maybe an opening for an objective. This could be a start for Leviathans. They find a pick on a LASBRA, but fast jump away for the Fenrir gets LASBRA a little bit of a gap. Leviathans, they're right back to the Oni Fury. Silence drop through. Sheento cannot channel his ultimate just yet. And unfortunately for Leviathans, that tornado goes immediately to the Fury instead of one of the gods on the Dragons.
That could have been devastating. That could have been devastating as well. It's one of those things, because you see the top down, we know that's not going to connect, but that knock-up could have been massive. That one is going to be massive.
Blink into the tail whip, just like it's been called for on the desk. It's a combo to take down Mike. Zapman credit for that one. Sheento, though, under fire by Nika. LASBRA being rained from death by Zapman. Adapting, goes over the wall, doesn't get the blink he was hoping for to try and chase Laz instead. Now, Nika in danger, gets the Fearless onto just Adapting in the beads.
Good
now forced away. Nika barely out of that one, and Dardez to turn it around. The damage from this Agni is starting to slam against the Leviathans. Vote takes down fineokay, but Sheento will knock out LASBRA.
Okay, it felt overwhelming in favor of the Leviathans, but it takes a little too long to get all those kills start to going in their favor. Might even be able to find more good stun from Dardez. Luckily, that Aegis is still there for Zap. He's barely walking out of this one.
Sheento goes in with ult, votes down. Dardez has a lot, though, finds the stun. Doesn't have a bomb for follow-up. You know he wants this one, but that slow from Ronngyu may have been the saving grace that keeps Dardez from going from a kill to Sheento. Now, the dash in could be one on a Ronngyu instead. Dardez will not let this one go, and it's a killing spree for the mid of the Dragons.
Have to do some real quick math. Pretty sure the Dragons get to come out on top of that one, fight-wise. And honestly, I think overall, maybe it doesn't immediately result in some plays on the map. In fact, with the Leviathans responding the way they did, they might be able to make the play onto the Fury and win that fight in the grand scheme. But that's a beautiful retaliation, right? It starts with that blink engage knock-up you called on the Nox. Pull over the wall from Adapting. Very clean engage, clean pick. It's the damage from Dardez right now that is just, it's too much to handle. I mean, he is hitting so hard. Gets a very easy kill. Both deaths so far for Adapting have been in these like narrow jungle corridors where, you know, essentially 1,000 of that 14K that Dardez has put up just creates so much space for him.
Well, Ronngyu hit by the Sunder, picked up by LASBRA and thrown to the Wolves. Or should I say, thrown to the Dragon as Nika picks up number 5 for his team. Credit to the rest of the squad, though, for setting that one up. Mike with the Sunder to get things going. LASBRA with the pickup on the Fenrir once more. The Dragons are right back in this game.
Not just back into it. I feel like at least shimmying their way into the driver's seat, right? They're still fighting over the steering wheel, but it feels like the Dragons have a little bit of a better grip. If they get this Oni Fury, assuming fineokay doesn't do something crazy sneaky, it might just be enough to send the Dragons over the edge to control.
Okay, thrown into the middle of the pit. Nika being ping-ponged around as well. The Oni Fury has not been fully released. The Dragons do manage to get the objective. The Leviathans cannot continue their chase up into the pit just yet, nor can they find a pick on Nika, who is backing on the pack side of the pit himself. Dardez has a bomb stun over the wall. fineokay goes in with a blink tail whip yet again. An easy combo for fineokay and Adapting to team up. They grab one, but LASBRA has now picked up Ronngyu, brought him under the tower, and Ronngyu will be going down. A 1-1 trade, Ronngyu for Vote.
Yeah, I think you're going to be happy with that, though, right? Ronngyu going down, unfortunate, but Vote's a bigger aspect of the team, or at least a bigger aspect of the damage numbers. 1-4 now, though, and you would think that that would mean Vote is further behind, but Vote was 3rd on the damage charts. Vote is just barely a level behind Zapman. Vote's still getting a lot of work done for someone who's getting just jumped on by the jungler so often. And I think that's what is, unfortunately for the Leviathans, causing a lot of trouble, is that these kills haven't led to too much for them. It hasn't been, let's kill, get an objective, let's kill, open up this part of the map, let's kill, get this tower. They've got 1 tower. They've not picked up any of the Furies, none of the Pyromancers. They just haven't been able to really open up neutral farm, neutral gold, anything that goes in their favor to give them that lead. So it's 6 kills that looks great. It just hasn't led to that big of a deficit, I guess, for the Dragons. Meanwhile, the Dragons picking up a lot of these objectives relatively cleanly. Admittedly, not as big of a lead as I think they would want, or honestly, as you would expect, considering the nature of a lot of their invades, but it's been good enough. I think this specific play from adapting right now is going to make the big difference.
It's the bully Vote tactic for the Leviathans. fineokay plucks Nika away, dispositions him, and now Nika thrown in the middle of 3. The knockup is there, quick beads, but adapting didn't even need the ultimate for that one. Instead, has a turn back by Vote. Zapman low, but Nika gets caught out, and adapting will drop him down. The Leviathans took him a while to find the pick they were looking for, but Nika down for 35.
fineokay, I was wondering if he'd go for a pluck, maybe try to start something. With adapting nearby, they could still go for a lot. They're really lucky. They did not lose Zapman in that fight, because even if they get the 1-for-1 trade, again, frontline for carry is going to feel a little more worthwhile for them. Experience has been relatively even. I mean, earlier it was in favor of the Leviathans. Still a little bit in favor of the Leviathans, right? 2 levels in jungle is pretty massive, and you're going to see some of that damage, but adapting's just not getting as much. I mean, 3 of the kills, 2 of them have been onto Vote. This last one onto Nika, it just hasn't been, I think, as much as they'd like. At this point, Dardez 3-0-3, top damage in the game by several thousand, has painted a pretty big target on his back, and they just can't get to him if you're the Leviathans yet. So I'm looking for that engage. I'm looking for that moment, right? Vote is getting a lot done despite the fact that he's 1-4. Dardez is just getting a lot done. The backline for the Dragons feels like they're able to do a lot. I'm not going to say unscathed, because I can see the KDAs, but at least enough that they've managed to take even 1-person losses of 5v4 and turn it around.
Oh, double fearless from Nika to start. LASBRA goes in as well. Finds the pickup on a Sheento. No beads for the Tiamat, but there's not enough follow-up damage. Sheento might just walk away. Gets the Aegis before the final cleave goes through, but it's Vote to shut him down. Now Nika to the backup of the Lawbringer. He wants blood. He wants to take down someone else, but for now, they'll settle with their 1 kill and a tier 1 tower. And the Dragons will march over to the Pyromancer as well.
Based on kills, fights, back and forth. Based on everything else, this map has been the Dragons. I mean, they have been in control of every single neutral objective. They have not felt like they've been, for a majority of this, out of control. At worst case scenario, I mean, you just saw it on the graph. The worst case scenario has been an even game state for them. And despite the fact that the kills are even, they have done more with that pressure, more with that time. I mean, Sheento's still gone for another 10 seconds. The lineup right now, they could have gone for a primal. They're definitely taking neutral objectives, but they're going to start warding, lining up and setting up for the Fire Giant, which now you need 1 more team fight cycle, but you get another pick the way that you've been getting them, and you're going to be able to start a lot more. Yeah, there's no way they're holding that. 24 minutes in, 25 minutes in, I mean, this is going to be one of the latest Fire Giants we've seen this set. And it will make a pretty big difference at this point. There's a lot of towers on the map that still need to be scooped away by both teams. We haven't seen a massive gold lead yet, J-Mac, and this Fire Giant is the one thing that is standing between either one of these teams and 10,000 gold.
Leviathans group up around Fire, 4 waiting inside the stealth grass. De-warding now for Leviathans. Mike is here. Has spotted out the Leviathans have stepped up. Nika as well standing by. But Leviathans not going to pull the objective with as many members of the Dragons that are standing around. With as little of a lead as Leviathans have, lacking out on any kind of crit to really shred through these objectives as well. Would take them a while to go through it. So Leviathans mostly just trying to establish some control around the pit. Wait for their opportunity, maybe wait for their fight. fineokay standing by, keeping eyes on the Dragons. There is crit out of vote, so it could be much faster for the Jade Dragons, especially the fact there's 3 runic bombs in pocket for the Dragons. But once again, it's a blink tail whip pull, but it's not enough follow-up on the Mike, and now River's Rebuke has locked LASBRA. He can't take his target where they want to. The Jade Dragons have lived through a little bit, but Nika caught out in the back line and stuck on the ring of fire. The Leviathans have got their 1 pick, and now it's enough to start fire.
And I'm going to say, they've got 8 kills on the board, might get a little more, might need a little more, because the Dragons still hanging around. They need to make this fight go their way.
Dardez drops 2 of his bombs, dashes away from fineokay, but now he's without his beads, plucked back and thrown to the rest of the squad. Dardez aces as much as he can. The last bomb used for damage, but he goes down. It's adapting with his 5th kill of the game. The Leviathans are picking apart the Dragons one by one, and back to the fire, business as usual for Leviathans.
And I've got to call it out. They've got 9 kills on the board. Those last 2 are the most important ones they've gotten all game. Some of the other ones, right, first blood, things like that, feel great. Those are the first ones that have really opened up the map for the Leviathans. A lot of the other times it's been retaliation. They've been looking for something else, maybe small invades, but nothing too crazy in their favor. I like the Dragons call. You lose 2, you're not winning the Fire Giant fight. You do not step up in the 3v5, especially with the low health bars they had. And instead, strip some of the neutral farm away, try to take some of the gold that the Leviathans would be getting otherwise. You're looking at 5,000 gold in towers on the Dragon side of the map for the Leviathans to pick up. And that is a pretty hefty swing, but if you add in suddenly the Pyromancer that's about to respawn, and had they not taken it, the Primal Fury that just went down, suddenly you're at 7,000, 7,500 in favor of the Leviathans. Add a little bit more from either the Oracles or buff invades, and we hit that 10,000 gold mark. Dragons do exactly what they need to do in this kind of instance. Recognize that they're losing the fight, get out of there, try to find balance where they can. You're still going to go down by a lot of gold, but you're burning time on this power play. You're making sure that it's not going to be a massive, massive swing in favor of the Leviathans. In fact, even after this Pyromancer, until we start to see some of these tier 2s go down, the Dragons have kept themselves at the point where this game is virtually even.
Now Leviathan starting to push up some of those towers. Tier 2 in mid, the first one. No minions, it'll take a little while for Leviathan to pop through. Sheento does have his lizards he can summon out, but those aren't going to remove backdoor nor tank up enough damage. Tier 2 still attempting to go down for Leviathans, but they're just not able to find an opening. LASBRA's been spotted out on the left side jungle. fineokay has been keeping his eye out on the rest of the Dragons. See if he can find that pluck. That blink tail whip has been the initiation for the Leviathans. What's this, 3 times now we've seen him go for that combo on Mike.
And why not, right? I mean, it's an easy pick. Same issue that they had last game in certain circumstances. You're still relatively easy to kill off Mage. I'm surprised the Dragons not only are defending this as well as they are, but repelling the Leviathans. I mean, it's by no means going to save the tier 2, right? We see it fall down. But they're getting enough poke that, look, in moments like this and in styles like this, you're really just trying to burn the timer on the power play, and they've done a beautiful job of that. I mean, 30 seconds till it's gone. The Leviathans, unless they got 2 kills miraculously right there, are not in conversations for pushing down a Phoenix. And now, J-Mac, we're in the talks of an enhanced Fire Giant, right, already? Which is kind of weird considering how this set has gone.
Where'd the time go?
Yeah, right? It feels like a lot of these games, so far today at least, we've got 2, 3 Fire Giants before we even start thinking of the enhanced one. Each one has hit that 30-minute mark, though. So, at least slower in those objectives. But the Dragons did a great job mitigating what that power play was able to amass. I mean, the Leviathans were falling a little behind where the Dragons were, but if you think about it, Dragons, they took the Primal Fury, so then lost a Pyro, a Tier 1, and 2 Tier 2s, which give about 4,000, 4,500, 4,300, somewhere in their gold in favor of the Leviathans, but with the farm the Dragons were getting up at the same time, you end up in a state where the Leviathans aren't anywhere near as far ahead as you would hope after sieging a lot of the towers. Still a lot of gold on the map for the Dragons to pick up in terms of 3 tier 2s and a tier 1. So a lot of wiggle room for them to continue to make a play. And they put themselves in a great position that when this Fire Giant respawns, it's not one that they have to be on left defending Fire Minions. It's not one that they're sitting back in base worried. They're in a great spot to fight this one, and I like that they're stepping up to it, that they've got the ward vision out. They're doing their best right now to cover things and get aggressive, and I'm looking at LASBRA as maybe being one that leads it. He's looking for blood, looking for the engage to the back. It's just a matter of finding it.
Who will it be on? Who will that first pick, that first initiation come from? Both of these squads. So we dance around the Fire Giant once more, now enhanced. So we crest over that 30-minute mark just earlier on. The Leviathans really biding their time around here. They've got plenty of wiggle room to play with. They've got 4 towers up, only 1 for the Dragons. But man, it just feels like everybody's walking on eggshells right now. All it takes is one misstep from the Leviathans, one misstep from the Jade Dragons. If either are out of position, could be an immediate pullback in. With beads up for everybody on the Dragons means that Mike is the most ideal target for fineokay's aggression. But fineokay caught out. Beads dash gets him away. And that's the first big relic now taken off the table.
That's a pretty big relic at that as well, right, Beads? On a Sobek, and something we had seen earlier. Nika goes for a big Fearless. Gets some good knock-up. Relatively low bullying, but that's a great pluck.
Beats is a little bit too late, still gets thrown back. fineokay in danger as LASBRA continues his chase in. PBM not quite enough either, and LASBRA goes too far forward. Adapting is turned back around. And fineokay lives on less than 100 HP. The Jade Dragons jungler sent back to the fountain. 50 more seconds till he respawns. But a Pyromancer to trade that one out. The Dragons keep it away from Leviathans. Now 3 in pocket for the Dragons once more.
Beat's still down for a while. Specifically on fineokay. Dangerous territory for a Sobek whenever you're missing that. That being said, 30 seconds without a jungler. I don't think fineokay cares much that his beads are down. Have to be a little cautious around Nika. Have to be a little cautious if he goes for an engage, anything like that. Dardez vote still do a lot of damage. But you've got the advantage to work with, you've just got to find the right setup.
He goes in, fineokay rooted place by Mike. A lot of damage from Vote with those crit auto attacks hitting through, even through the Spectral Armor. Fire Giant's not going down fast though. Nika plucked back. The silence there to try and bail him out. It might just be enough. fineokay though still trying to get aggressive. And Vote's ultimate plus PBMs to zone out. But here comes Adapting with the pack line. Nika has to go away. fineokay down. And Adapting cannot grab Nika. LASBRA's back from the grave. And now it's a minute without fineokay for the Levi's.
Fire Giant. And its burn potential just shrank dramatically. For Leviathans, all of a sudden, you're going back to the ward game. You're looking for that. Play pressure for the Dragons. Jumps right back up, considering you've got LASBRA back. Still has to play carefully. We've seen, especially that last death, it's not the easiest to just go super deep. The build, pretty solid in terms of damage. Does not do well, I think. Well, now it will do a little better in terms of keeping him alive. But Zap has a lot of burn, which we have seen time and time again. Actually leapfrogging Vote, who had been second most damage in the game for a long time now. Zap's been able to get enough. Nika's got to be careful. They've got to be careful in these engages.
Ronngyu separates the fight with River's Rebuke. Dardez left by himself.
Had
Fire
these
Giant
Aegis.
started by the Jade Dragons. No Aegis for Dardez. Keep eyes on his health bar, but also be watching the Fire Giant. Nika and LASBRA playing zoning duty. Aegis gone by Zapman. Beats and ultimate as well. Zapman tries to take down one while Nika falls to the back line. The Fire Giant does go to the Dragons, but can everybody make it out? Blink in by Adapting to find LASBRA. It should go down to the combo of Adapting and fineokay. Dragons get 3 with fire, but Leviathans pick away 2.
Getting that kill on the LASBRA is what makes this a little more favorable for the Leviathans. You lose the EFG, which means that this Phoenix Siege is still going to be a little slow overall. You've got some decent damage behind you, though, right? Adapting autos, Zapman autos should be enough. But you still got a lot of damage from Dardez. You got a lot of damage from Vote. But they can't do much with this buff. That's the big playmaker killing LASBRA does. If he stays alive there, even if you lose just Nika, I think the Dragons are able to step up a lot further. But a 3v5, much more difficult to stand into. Even with the amount of damage they've been doing, I mean, you're relying a lot on PBM to find either a massive silence, a big root to open up a pick. Let's just use your ults, try to hold as much of the base as you possibly can. Maybe when your team respawns, you can get something on the map, but Leviathans, with this retreat, should grab the Primal on the way back, get a little bit of extra gold. And then they'll find themselves sitting in a still, let's just call it okay position, right? I mean, we said it earlier, 2,000 gold means very little 30 minutes in. Means even less when you've got pretty much a full build for a lot of these players. Talking 500 pots, you're talking upgraded relics. Small discrepancies that can make a really big difference, right? 30 seconds off of one of your relic timers can be huge. Power potions. Or if we get to the point where we had it last game, 3K pots. Those can all make very large differences in the middle of a team fight. And we've been seeing the damage numbers right now are so crazy. I'm actually going to keep my eyes on Dardez more than anybody here, right? Top of the damage charts by still quite a few thousand. Has been holding that spot for the entire game. And I think for the Dragons right now, Dardez is one of the saving graces. 4-1-4 has been a haven in terms of either getting out alive, saving some of his teammates, or setting kills up, opening up opportunities for himself more than anything, right, for 4 kills. And also for LASBRA, a little bit for Vote. I think he's still just as massive here.
Tier 2 tower for the Dragons. Fire Giant buff still for 23 seconds. Not much more that the Dragons can do. And they stalemated this game. They delayed it a little while longer by getting that Fire Giant. Even losing a couple players wasn't enough for Leviathans to step much further forward. And with mid-Phoenix, the one that was taken, a little bit easier for the Dragons to defend. They're trying to go for this next fire. Primal Fury, well, was thought to maybe be something to grab a little bit earlier on their rotation out of the left side, will now be dropped by the Leviathans. Now give them that a little bit of extra damage boost that they need up against the Fire Giant. You saw how long it took for the Leviathans to go. Nika used the blink, but just off the mark of grabbing whichever target it was that he was aiming for. So that's blinked down for 100 seconds by Nika, but the Dragons aren't interested in fire. Core, they want an ambush. They want to get one pick onto somebody. Mike's gonna go in, and he'll find just Zapman. Ronngyu steps up, fineokay to the back line, finds a knock up onto Mike, and will pull him back through. Mike is gone from the fight. The turn and burn from the Leviathans has now sent one of the Dragons back. Vote, no more beads, adapting, finds a knock up, adapting. Gets 7 in a row for the team. And now LASBRA separate himself, beats away the stun from Sheento, but the damage from this Tiamat not enough to take him down yet. It sets the Leviathans pushing forward.
It's just clean plucks, and I love this. They aren't wasting any time. They've got fire minions. They've got a 5v3 for 40 full seconds. I love marching into the Titan room. They just have to be careful. Again, Dardez, a lot of damage. LASBRA still can get to the back. Cause a little trouble for adapting and zap. But if they get a good pluck, if they burn Nika's health bar, they have nothing to worry about.
No, Nika hit the second knockup afterwards, and now it's only 2. Does Dardez have enough damage? No, he does not. He dashes in. The Aegis buys time, but not enough. The Leviathans have brought this one back through. LASBRA tries to take out Sheento, but it's the Atlantis Leviathans who come out on top, take game 3 and the set against the Dragons.
Look, I got to give the Dragons some credit. I like the ambush that they were going for. If they get a pick there, it is the easiest either enhanced Fire Giant they've gotten in their lives, or they can march down into a Phoenix in a 4v5, really start to force some problems. The downside is they expected to grab 1. They were thinking, okay, Leviathans are going to go towards right because Fire Giant's respawning. They're going to go to ward up. We'll have one person who's walking through mid to clear, maybe push up the fire minions. That's going to be it. That's all we got to deal with. I don't think they expected all 5 of them to be right there. And then you get really good counter engage. I mean, the minute fineokay goes in, gets a good knock up, you saw Mike pulled in by adapting. melted inside the River's Rebuke. No chance to really get a disengage or to walk away from that one. So good play from adapting, and it really just opens the floodgates for them to just surge forward. At that point, the one kill is enough for you to get aggressive, guarantees an EFG. The second kill, that's what gives them the game.
Just clean play at the end for the Atlantis Leviathans. The blink tail whip combo to set up for adapting works 4 for 4 on PBM. It's a great way for Leviathans to catapult themselves a win up against the Jade Dragons. That's it for Guan on the Castle. Throw it to the desk to break it down.
Atlantis Leviathans are able to bounce back after what was a difficult day yesterday. Remember, they lose 2 straight to the Eldritch Hounds. Now you're able to go into Game 3 against the Jade Dragons and seemingly figure things out. And Miff, I think this is a pretty big one-day turnaround. This is a Leviathans team that looked a bit lost yesterday and seemingly found their identity today.
I mean, I just like the strategy. I don't know that it's something we'll see consistently, but these compositions that have worked out for the Leviathans, I think that are things they can iterate on as they start to improve and continue forward and start developing that identity, sharpening that blade. There was a clear inflection point in this game, Dave. Throughout the entirety of that early to mid game, we would see a gravity surge onto a tanky target, and they'd walk away with 10% HP. Eventually, around that 28, 30-minute mark, a tank got hit by gravity surge, and they died. And I said to myself, well, that's it. The Leviathans, they figured it out. The composition has hit full swing, and now PBM is under constant threat, or Nika is under constant threat. And once they're able to consistently take out those tanky targets, it doesn't matter how much damage Dardez is doing. It doesn't matter how difficult it is to jump on a vote in that back line. Once you work through the front, I'm not sure those squishies can defend a Titan on their own, and they couldn't.
And now for the Jade Dragons, they lost against the Oni Warriors last weekend 2-1. They now lose to the Leviathans, 2-1. So the Jade Dragons on a couple set loss streak here. I think there's a lot of good for the Leviathans to take away from this set. It feels like a lot of their win conditions really started to win here in this set. You talked about diversifying away from Sheento. Feels like the Leviathans were able to do that. One of those win conditions always has been, always will be adapting, who's standing by with J-Mac for the postgame.
That's right. I've got adapting, the jungler for the Leviathans with me. And adapting, kind of walk me through game number 3, the picks and bans. You go for a Sobek, Awilix combo at the end. Was that the game plan from the beginning, is figure out which target doesn't have your beads, ends up being Mike every single time? Is that what you kind of dialed in as that win con for your team in these fights?
Yeah, I mean, I basically just called that I can just gravity search a front line and they can't really return any damage. Like, I will do so much damage onto whoever I pluck, it doesn't matter that they're tanky. And I can also feather step a lot of damage, and then, it's just an easy way for us to start a fight. Mm-hmm. And they can't really dive us, because we're going to be 5-man stacked on whoever we've pulled in. And, Mike not going beats just made him kind of the easiest target to look for. Sometimes we would look for other people without relics, but, when everyone had everything up, Mike's the guy to go for.
Did it catch you by surprise when you guys are walking through mid and all of a sudden the full 5-stack comes out of the jungle, they target Zapman? Did that kind of catch y'all off guard, or were you guys able to kind of recoup in time to be able to fight back?
Of course not. That was it was an obvious play. We knew they were going to look for it. I called they were going to try and do a lot of those janky plays, and everyone kind of knew they're probably just in the left jungle here. And we just called, can we fight? Yes. Okay, let's bait it.
Well, it worked out well for you guys. Tell me what a set like this one means to you guys, because the Jade Dragons have been struggling a little bit. You guys have had a little bit of a struggle with your startup. So what does a win like this against the Jade Dragons mean for you guys looking forward for the rest of this phase?
Well, I think we've had a really bad start, and I actually think we've had a lot of games where we've been in winning positions, but we just haven't been able to close out the games, and a lot of that's just come down to building the synergy with each other, but also how we communicate with each other around these objectives. And I think today we really hammered down on communicating what we want to do and how we want to do it, and it worked. So hopefully we can keep building on that.
Yeah, kind of talk to me one last one for you about game number 1, because this felt like it was kind of like that classic Leviathan style of play from Season 8, Season 9, where not a lot of kills are going through. It's a lot more objective focus. Is that kind of the game plan for game number 1 for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we knew that they probably have a better early game. So we just need to scale and just play and just try and be smart with how we fight, fight with numbers, and then utilize the fact that we have a Chernobog mid. And Sheento was just off split pushing half the game, and it created so much space for us in a way at the same time, and stop them doing other things.
Well, look good for you guys adapting. Congratulations on the win against the Dragons. I'll let you get back with your team to celebrate. We'll throw it back to the desk to keep it going down.
Thank you.
And I think there's a lot to glean from that interview there. I think adapting a smart mindset with how the Leviathans games have gone this year. And I think one thing that's good for us to get a glimpse into is adapting, and the rest of the Leviathans realizing that a lot of the games they've lost this year, they feel like they've been in winning positions in. And so there's two ways to take that, right? It's that, one, you've lost games that you feel like you maybe should have won. On the other side, at least you've put yourself in winning positions, and eventually those will start to convert themselves into wins. You think the best is in front of this Leviathans team?
I think so. I mean, adapting gives us a lot of insight there. It's a squad that is working on communication, realizing that they have the pieces to find wins even before this point. You know, a lot of winning positions, as he had said. I tend to agree. Closing out those games had been the issue. Didn't seem like an issue this time around. When they did end the game, it was concise calls, clean play, and that's what won the day.
Myth, that's our first of 3 best-of-3s here in the SPL on this Saturday. Styx, Ferryman, Eldritch Hounds, they are up next. Grab your snacks, grab your drinks, stick around. Hounds versus Ferryman coming up.